When did someone get wronged and burn it all down? I once attended a birthday party with a bouncy castle. The birthday kid and their friends kicked the younger sibling and his friend out, so they unplugged it and watched everyone's dismay as it deflated. Way to go, Mason. That was a pro move for a 12-year-old. I used to be into amateur radio after a short stint in the Army Cadets. There was this one guy in the East Midlands, UK, who was one of the adult instructors. He was always telling us about amateur radio and did hand out old or cheap pieces of tech he'd tried out and wasn't keeping. Anyway, he was a little weird, overly friendly with adults. He never had any bad vibes around kids. And obviously he had some social anxiety which he was compensating for. Personally, I suspect he was on the spectrum somewhere, but who knows? After I left the cadets and went to uni, I stayed in touch on Facebook. We were in the same Facebook group for amateur radio hobbyists. He always liked to do things by the book and instilled in us the importance of being responsible and socially conscious with our radio use. He was the same on Facebook, reminding people that Mrs. Miggins on her £10 handset wouldn't know about transmission power and squelch, etc. He mentioned in passing to a new member the importance of only using the public unlicensed channels, kind of like CB radio in the US, on the correct, very low power setting of half a watt. He mentioned it was because Mrs. Miggins trying to reach her kid in the next street wouldn't understand the idea that she could hear you, but couldn't reach you to ask you to be quiet a minute. He was correct here, and it's also a criminal offense to transmit at higher power on these frequencies, even though it's not enforced. Anyway, this got someone's back up and he was kicked from the group for preaching. After unsuccessfully asking to be let back in, he set up a larger antenna in his back garden, set up a super fancy aerial atop of it with a 30-watt transmission system. This is really powerful if you're wondering. And he now turns this on for several hours a day on whatever channels the radio club or group are using to teach them the importance of good etiquette. This means that nobody can use certain frequencies for hours at a time, as it just sounds like someone's having a one-way conversation on air. He could probably be arrested, but that doesn't seem to bother him at all. Yep, there are extreme hobbyists out there who do not give an F. Like, they're more passionate about it than they are about their lives and families, and this kind of fanaticism is why you do not want to cross them. I worked in an office for a Fortune 500. One of our longtime team members, Gloria, worked as a level 2 employee for quite a while. She was good enough to be level 3 or 4, but never took the offer because she was a single mum, relied on public transportation, and a few other reasons. Her friend, Patricia, started at the same time she did and was on level 3, working up to a level 4. Patricia and Gloria were all good until Patricia discovered that Gloria made more than Patricia because she was constantly getting merit raises and performance bonuses. One day, Gloria made an honest mistake. Our client just switched to a different protocol for billing and she accidentally billed him in the old way. It was a no-harm, no-foul situation, but Patricia went to the level 4 employees and senior management and suggested that Gloria be fired. They all went to HR, who said that while there was no valid reason to fire her, they could move her to a crappier team that would basically guarantee her failure. Gloria realized what was happening and secured another job. We were going to be off for 4 days for Christmas, and Gloria quit Thursday by leaving an after-hours voicemail. Gloria knew that the message wouldn't be received until Monday morning, so she sent out an email to the entire building, timed to be sent at 11:59 Christmas Eve. The email detailed how Patricia was having an affair with her brother-in-law while her husband was deployed, how one senior manager took this job because he was fired for embezzlement and lost his certified public account license, and how one of our male level 3 employees requested a transfer because our married department manager was basically throwing themselves at him. We got in at 8, HR and IT got in at 9. It was a crap show Monday morning. Quite a few people quit that day, and to think it all could have been avoided. I've run into Gloria and Patricia since then. Gloria is thriving. She got a stern phone call from the company and they tried to withhold her last paycheck, but that was it. Patricia is, well, a little more humble now. She was going through some serious crap at the time, and while that doesn't excuse any of the stuff that she did, I think the letter was a wake-up call that she needed to fix her life. You know, this really could be applied to my soon-to-be ex-husband. He has mommy issues. He has daddy issues. He has sibling issues. Basically, his parents divorced when he was in grade school, and no one really ever parented him from that point forward. His dad left. His mum, in my opinion, has no sense of accountability and can never be wrong about anything, so not exactly a great role model. She restarted her career after the divorce and left him in the dust. My husband never really healed from the aftermath of his parents' divorce. I can understand. My own parents' divorce negatively affects me to this day in some ways. Though my parents are the polar opposite of his. They're both extremely involved and giving. I think the more my parents involved themselves in our lives, the more he realized what a parent was supposed to look like. When our baby was born and my parents worked to be helpful and bond with him, I think it almost showed a giant magnifying glass on the abandonment issues he had buried and run from his whole life. He cracked this year, ran away with someone, threw me and my loving family away, but briefly got the attention he was yearning for from both his crappy absentee parents in his time of crisis. That attention didn't last too long. He burnt our marriage and the life we had built over 10 years to the ground. He felt so sad and wanted me to feel as badly as he did, though any warmth he enjoyed from doing so quickly dissipated. He regrets everything. Okay, late update. We've been separated for months, but within the past 6 weeks he's been trying to open the door. I've been patient with him and encouraging while he tries to find the right specialists. He called me tonight to tell me he's back with his mistress, so I guess he doesn't really regret anything. I need to redact that last sentence, I wouldn't want to be inaccurate. And just FYI, I was still in denial about having to get a divorce. It's stupid, but I wanted to work through some of this even though we couldn't stay married through therapy. Hold me accountable if you must, it's 100% done. My uncle. He was always the black sheep of the family, but it turned out he had been carefully planning his future from the start. He got a full ride to his dream college, got a really well-paying job, got married, and now has a child who's a few months old. My grandparents, his parents, always thought he was a disappointment as he was their only son. He knew this and they just bullied him for a while about how he never lived up to their expectations. Turns out his parents and all 4 of his sisters ran themselves into quite a bit of debt, and he only found out as he was nearly done with college. They came to my uncle for help after he found employment, and he basically gave my whole family the finger and said for them to help themselves. I'm literally the only one of any of my cousins or siblings who bothered contacting him years after this whole ordeal. At the time, I was too young to understand what the frick was happening, let alone travel by myself. So I contacted him via Facebook Messenger, and his wife is a lovely woman. His daughter is so cute and gorgeous, and he's still the same strong, kind-hearted man that I remember. My parents know I'm on contact with him, and they just don't care. I'll be staying over at their house for a little while next week, and I'm so glad I was able to meet my little cousin. I'm a behavioral interventionist at a middle school. My job is technically to pull disruptive students out of class, get them redirected, then back into their classroom. Most of my job is actually a sounding board and an understanding ear to the kids who struggle. My entire job is an example of that one quote, "A child who's not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth." The neglect and rough lives of some of these kids would break your heart. It's good to have people like you in that job who treat their role as a caregiver rather than as a bailiff or a punisher. A lot of very savable and deserving kids can get messed up by an unforgiving school environment. I guess my story would maybe count for this. I cut my relatives out of my life when I was 19. They'd spent all my life tormenting me and treating me like I was dirt. With me gone, there's my aunt, my uncle, my grandmother, and my dad. With my dad being the youngest at 58 years old now. There's no younger generation to take care of them. My aunt would be prepared for that, but my dad and my grandmother were banking all of their hopes on me caring for them in their old age. So much so that they'd make fun of me for how incapable I was of domestic tasks. For example, I didn't learn how to use a washing machine until I Googled it at 19. But when I asked them how to show me anything, they always made excuses. "Your school should be teaching you that. You should know how to do that. Figure it out. I'll show you some other time." They never would show me though. They liked having evidence of what a horrible, incompetent, and lazy person they saw me as. They also didn't want me to be able to live independently because that would make it easier for me to move out, which would mean I wouldn't be at their immediate use. I also lied and said that I was required to live on campus for the first year I went to university. I wasn't planning to cut contact yet, but I was desperate for a taste of independence. My aunt gave me my birthday money early so I could afford the deposit. I felt awful because my aunt was actually the only one who'd ever stood up for me, but keeping in contact with her would have been too complicated, and I'm certain she would have put some pressure on me to mend things with the others. Not even a month after I moved into my student accommodation, I got into an argument with my dad and finally stood up for myself. I cut contact, and with that, I was expecting to become homeless once I finished my first year and my lease finished. I was too mentally ill to complete my studies and hold down a job at the same time. As luck would have it, everything turned out fine. A lot of bumps in the road, but I graduated, didn't end up homeless, and I'm now working in the healthcare system. I don't exactly regret cutting contact, but I'll admit I should have done some research on my options for homelessness instead of just hoping for the best. It nearly destroyed my life. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I burnt everything down in my last job as a rehab tech in a nursing home. I was treated poorly after a couple of months, my workload was doubled, and I was never listened to about my concerns. I begged them to hire a second tech, even just part-time, so I could breathe and have my mental state not be ruined. They always told me no, and then piled on more work. They got mad at me when patients weren't complying. They ran me around like a dog for hours, cut my lunch hour for no reason, and refused to give me any sort of pay raise when minimum wage went up. I was at my wits' end, and everyone but my manager and therapist could see it. I also experienced a privacy violation that I wished to report to HR. I was basically forced to tell my manager why I needed to take a day off and for what medical procedure I was getting it for. Another instance, I was told I was clearly gaining weight by one of the therapists and my manager, and then they laughed about it. I was so mad that I put in my 2 weeks, but I could barely make it 2 more days. After one awful, busy morning, I packed up my stuff during my break, clocked out, and went home. I sent a text to my manager saying I won't be coming back, and then I blocked her. I felt bad doing it, but I had nurses and aides telling me to quit because they saw how miserable I was. About a week or so later, they went into lockdown because of COVID. Does anyone know the actual story of King Shaka Zulu? He was literally that guy. Shaka was born as an illegitimate son of a Zulu and was thus rejected by the Zulu settlements. He spent his childhood growing up in his mother's settlements and was then lent an army, which he used to take over the Zulu tribe. Cue one of the greatest but most intense African warriors and monarchs of all time. I'm burning down my community right now. That is, my neighbors are messing with me, trying to weaponize the bylaws of our HOA to construct a spiteful road on my property for their driveway. They're calling it fire safety. I call it 25 grand in unnecessary legal expenses. So I let my HOA know that if they allow this, if they don't stand up forcefully for me in court, then I'll use the same power to demand a 60-foot road down the entire HOA, literally forcing neighbors I don't know to move their homes. I'm being treated poorly, I feel unwelcome in my new village, so I'm enforcing my rights and burning down the neighborhood. It'll cost 25 landowners $1 million to make up for messing with me. Some of them may literally lose their homes, and afterwards their property values will be much lower. But I told them what would happen if they didn't support me. I gave them a chance. My God, this is about as toxic an HOA situation as I've ever seen, and we've read a bunch here. Surely your neighbors aren't going to commit if that somehow means you bulldozing down theirs and everyone else's houses, right? My brother. My family wasn't loving. I coped with it with my venturing out and exploring on my own. I'd leave early each day and explore nature, only coming home for food. My brother coped with the lack of love by meeting strange women, substances, fighting, parties, and stealing things. He had a really distorted view of needing love, and he really acted like if he wasn't getting love, then the world deserved to burn. He went to prison in his early teens. He got out in his 20s, tried to be good for a year, but couldn't find his concept of love, so he started burning the village again. Went back to prison, got out years later, tried to go clean, and this time found love. But he pushed himself too hard to be lovable. He developed a super personality built on crystal. He did substances to keep up, lost his love, started to burn the village down again. This last time, the local sheriff ended the cycle. He wasn't going to go back inside. During the road chase, they filled his windshield with bullets and he veered off a cliff and died in the dirt. It was the headline of the local news. I think I may forever compare my life to my brother's. How could we be so different? We had the same parents and endured very similar pains, but I didn't choose to burn down the village. I chose to distance myself and survive. He went nuclear. The village didn't have a chance. I worked at a very famous family-oriented company for almost 15 years. I was damn good at my job, but I refused to brown nose or play dirty office politics, so I pretty much stayed on my original spot for a long time. Because of this, I became a pretty regularly used advice platform for other employees on how to handle workplace issues, and because I valued my integrity, I never reported red flags to management, but I always encouraged the person to do so on their own behalf. Eventually, a few key people remembered how I helped them and circumvented the usual cronyism to bring me into their teams for big-name projects. It was a nice change and I appreciated the chance to stretch my legs. Then I started getting systematically bullied and harassed by the in-crowd who had decided I was unworthy of being in their presence. I ended up going to therapy about it to help develop tools to deflect while desperately looking for a way out. Eventually, I got another job and handed a sort of manifesto to HR when I turned in my 30 days notice. Racism, people coming on to me, shoving, blatant favoritism, theft, all with dates, names, and supporting evidence. Basically an HR nightmare because they couldn't control what I did when I left, including going to the press. My departure gave them 30 days to ask me questions, interview me, whatever. But it never came. Thing is, I also sent that novel off to the EEOC. They opened an investigation with the company, and the moment they did, all heck broke loose. See, the people who were too afraid to come forward before now had an out. They weren't snitching, they were complying with an investigation per company policy. So suddenly, scores of people were testifying to HR about the horrific things they'd been subject to. Some people were fired, others were demoted. A few did get off scot-free, but I sleep like a baby now. I knew a girl a few years back who I think was a decent example of this. She was diagnosed with AD back in primary school and was shunned by her whole family because of it. As a result, she had low self-esteem and slowly grew a profound hatred for people, which resulted in everyone at school hating her, and as a result, her hatred grew more. After her 17th birthday, she ran away, but before she did, she'd spent about 5 years gathering dirt on everyone who had wronged her. She released it all, which resulted in her parents splitting and a bunch of other kids being expelled or getting into crap with their parents, and if memory serves me correctly, one kid even got disowned because of what everyone found out about him. She ended up running to a family friend of mine and is still working on rebuilding her life. It's a shame, because she's one of the nicest people I know and is a very honest person. Everyone just treated her like crap, so she burned it all. In December, I rage quit my job. My boss was losing her frickin' mind. I worked in a small office with about 8 or 9 people. In my time there, I saw 11 people come and go from various positions. One day when the boss and her sister, the vice witch, were out, employees all had a discussion about how bad the work environment was getting. Micromanaging, no autonomy or flexibility, it really wasn't a good place to be in general. We pinned it down to mostly being due to the behavior of the vice witch. One employee agreed to take one for the team and discuss it with the head witch. However, the head witch completely twisted everything that was said and took it as the employees telling on everyone else for having this conversation. She had individual meetings with each one of us. She blasted us about what was said and she was insistent on finding out who started it. She didn't buy it when we all just said it was a fluid discussion that was had, not some planned meeting called by one person. After the individual meetings, we had a meeting with all of us where she told us it was absolutely unacceptable that we'd had our little session, and if we didn't like it, she'd accept our resignations immediately. She, quote, expected loyalty, and if we weren't loyal, we weren't welcome. We tried to reason with her in the meeting, telling her it was just some general concerns we had, and we'd agreed one person would present them to her, but she was having none of it. No solution for the problems that were making all of her employees upset. It was all about her and her sister. No concern for her indentured servants, as we called ourselves. I should have quit then and there when she said that she'd accept our resignations, but I didn't. I did start looking for jobs, though. I had an interview one day and I texted in sick. I'd quietly let one of my coworkers, who I thought I could trust, know about the interview. When I texted my boss, I got the response, "Good luck at your interview. I expect loyalty, not silly games." So I went to my interview. It went well. I didn't end up taking the job though, it wasn't a great fit. I got home and wrote up my letter of resignation and emailed it. Told her I wouldn't be returning and would have someone collect my personal items for me. In the email, I told her exactly what I thought of what she did. I was in the middle of a lot of projects. This was for an e-commerce company, so I can see a lot of what's being done by checking out the website. I can see a lot of stuff get stalled or restarted completely. It definitely set them back, and the person who I'm pretty sure ratted me out about the interview was running off her butt and had a lot of late nights at the office, from what I heard. I'm still friends with one person who works there, and who is desperately looking to GTFO. She said they now have daily affirmations, of the boss's choosing, that they have to recite 3 times daily. On Mondays, they receive a sheet of paper with the week's affirmations printed out. I only wish she had tried that crap while I was there. She would have gotten a piece of my mind. One of my best friends in high school had a few really crappy boyfriends. She's very bright, excelled on the debate team, and is really attractive. But her mum was a serious alcoholic, always getting into new relationships and then breaking up, which I think passed some attachment issues onto my friend. When we were seniors, she was talking about all the losers she had dated, been mistreated by, and how none of them were going anywhere in life. She said something to the effect of, "I'd love to be there when they inevitably get locked up for substances or attacking their spouses or both." She got a law degree, moved back to our town, and is now the county prosecutor.
What is the most overrated video game of all time? At this point, Pokemon. Ever since it got to 3D, it's gone downhill in terms of gameplay quality. I'm not going to argue about Pokemon designs because my issue is how they never got their Super Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild. Even the Mega Evolutions are fine, but they keep adding and changing gimmick mechanics to the point it feels like Yu-Gi-Oh!, where every entry has to add their own mechanic, and it makes the overarching game a cluster of rules and modifiers. They milk nostalgia so hard like Sword and Shield. So many Gigamax evolutions, special versions of Dynamax, one on new Pokemon, but most were Gen 1 Pokemon. No other company do I see so shielded from their lack of quality and innovation. We even had a taste of an improved gameplay formula in Arceus and us researching Pokemon. We use It's a Kids game as an excuse to make crap when kids deserve good if not better games than us cause they don't have the knowledge to know it's crap. I gotta wholeheartedly agree with this, not the part about Pokemon being generally crap, just that I do think Pokemon as a franchise is shielded far too much for what people get. I mean, it's one of the most goddamn successful franchises in the entire world, and the games are fine, but that's just it. They're fine. I think Scarlet and Violet did look crap though. Like for me personally, X and Y was the last Pokemon game that I actually bought, and then I borrowed Sword or Shield, I can't remember which one, and it was fine, but I really do expect better from one of the most successful franchises in the entire world. Probably the most successful franchise in the world. I'm gonna stick my neck out and say The Last of Us is a cool story to experience once, but as a video game, it's not some 10 out of 10 mind-blowing experience, and people got way too fanatical about it. I personally really enjoyed The Last of Us. I played through it multiple times. I even did a run where I refused to use guns where the game did not force me to. It's a solid game, but it's also one of those games that basically went, oh, a man can only be interesting and deep and philosophical and sad and vulnerable if he has a child around. Like, you know what put me off 2018 God of War? When, oh, Kratos has a son now, and now he's an interesting character. Kratos was already interesting, you cowards. There were already several segments in multiple games that showed the depth of his anguish at the loss of his family and his vulnerability, which he channels through unyielding violence. Far Cry. The first 3 were ahead of the game, but everything since is just copy and pasted. You mean like everything else that Ubisoft make? Oh, I went there. I actually don't really play Far Cry. I've only played Far Cry Primal on the Wii. I actually have Far Cry 2 on my Steam library because it was like £2 or something like that. So maybe I'll give that a go because this guy said, I've heard the original Far Cries are freaking amazing. But yeah, Ubisoft as a company, I feel like their newer Far Cry games, friggin' Assassin's Creed, they all just kind of blend together in my eyes. I don't really care about them anymore. I used to love Assassin's Creed, and Rayman Origins freaking rock. Like, Ubisoft used to be a good company. Overwatch, it's just a shooter, man. It doesn't deserve the worship that it got, and it consistently underdelivers. People assume it has such a deep lore and world, but it really is a bare bone of a basic concept done to death. I don't take this comment that seriously. I'm not an Overwatch guy. I used to be when it first came out. I played it for ages with friends all the time, but I'm pretty sure the die-hard fans of Overwatch are few and far between at this point, and it is far from an overrated game at this stage. Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong, though. Might be a controversial take, but The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I love it and hate it at the same time. I love the potential, but hate the execution. I love the lore around it, but hate how the game shows barely any of it. I love the world, but hate how empty it is. I love the characters, if they had any character at all. I love and hate it with a passion. I never actually finished The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, but, I think it's a case with open world games where it's very easy to lose steam in them. It was just okay, in my opinion. Not like, it was pretty groundbreaking, I guess, for 2011. God, that's old now. But personally, I was just getting super into Monster Hunter at that stage in my life. World of Warcraft. The lengths people will go through to try and keep that game playable is astounding. Combat just feels so clunky and repetitive. Okay, so I love Final Fantasy XIV, but I really don't think like combat is like the biggest thing in World of Warcraft. What I like about World of Warcraft is the world and exploring that world. That is dope as hell, exploring Azeroth. I'm gonna catch some crap for this, but BioShock. It never caught flack for being derivative of System Shock, even to the point of being named in an obvious homage to it. Probably because relatively few people actually played System Shock at that point. But if they had, they might have wished BioShock was more derivative of it, because while BioShock dresses itself with the language of immersive sims, it completely failed to deliver on its initial promise of an open-level, play-it-your-way experience. BioShock is a game where you can sneak, but you can't beat the game by sneaking. You can hack, but you can't beat the game by hacking. Open combat is an inevitability. Similarly, the levels are big and open, but it always has a very clear idea of where you're supposed to go next and how you'll get there. I suppose it's appropriate in an ironic way that BioShock only ever gives you the illusion of choice. Speaking of which, the narrative is overall pretty mediocre, aside from the admittedly well-executed twist everyone talks about. Many of the areas, the only reason you're there is that it was between you and your objective, and that it's kind of the tone. It also mostly fails to integrate its political themes. Rapture's liberation vision failed because everyone got a substance that gave them superpowers but made them insane, not because the original vision was ghastly. Similarly, the communist opposition to it failed because the leader was secretly corrupt from the start. The game never really offers an opinion on whether either idea could work or why they would fail. It just kind of plays in the space for a bit before something else makes the question irrelevant. Yeah, I kind of get where they're coming from. I still enjoy BioShock. I haven't played it for a while, but if you really want a game that's really open in the way that you can approach the entirety of it and win in like very specific ways, then play Dishonored. That is an amazing game. That's the game that I will talk about, and people are probably going to turn around and go, oh, that's so overrated though. No. It's a perfect game, actually. Zelda Breath of the Wild. I am a Zelda fan. I really love the series. I tried my best to get into this game and I wanted to love it, but I just could not as I found it very boring. Fair enough if they feel that way. Personally, I thought that Breath of the Wild is probably one of the single greatest open world experiences in any video game ever. If anything, I'm having more trouble playing Tears of the Kingdom recently. I just cannot get into that game right now. Maybe it's because I'm just so busy and stuff, or I don't know, maybe it's because it feels a bit too similar to the original game with a lot of added mechanics. Sure, but whatever. Listen, it's still good, but in no universe should Ocarina of Time win a best game of all time competition. And yet, I think I disagree with that. I actually think the design philosophy in Ocarina of Time is super good. Z-targeting is still used to this day in many games, although obviously it's not called Z-targeting anymore, it's just lock-on. Like, I don't know, I feel like you could probably take a lot of third-person action games and be like, oh yeah, this kind of originated from Ocarina of Time in this way, you know? I mean, for God's sake, Dark Souls, Elden Ring and all that, it's basically just Ocarina of Time, really, when you get down to gameplay, but it's all polished and smooth and amazing. So personally, I gotta disagree with that. I think Ocarina of Time frickin' rocks, actually. And I ain't even talking from a place of nostalgia. I played that game for the first time all the way through on the 3DS. Controversial opinion, the Dark Souls franchise. I think most of its difficulty is artificially created by clunky controls and a deliberate vagueness about how to tackle enemies. The people who love this game will say these are exactly the things that make it so great and I just need to get good scrub. Opinions differ and that's fine, but for me it feels like a disingenuous way to make things more difficult. I couldn't disagree with this person more. In my opinion, Dark Souls and Bloodborne, Elden Ring, and Dark Souls 3, but not Dark Souls 2, use a lot of context and logic in the way that they do level design and enemy placement. Easy example, Sen's Fortress. If you run straight in there, you will notice that the first thing that happens is you activate a trap. This establishes a tone and establishes what you need to look out for and the kind of things that this place has up its sleeves. And if you don't adapt to stop and analyze the area for dangers and whatnot, where you can and where you feel safe to, then you're gonna be fine. But if you just rough rod right in there, then you're gonna die. I frickin' love Dark Souls. I can't wait for Armored Core, but I feel bad for the OG fans because Armored Core is not Dark Souls. Black and White, Molyneux's magnum opus, was just a glorified Tamagotchi. Never played Black and White 1, but I did love Black and White 2 as a kid. Red Dead Redemption 2, because it's just not fun to play, which, for me, is what a video game should be, Dutch. I'm actually playing through this game for the first time recently, and it's not that it's not fun, but it's certainly a bit annoying when the game, forces me to beat a guy because I need to catch tuberculosis or, the 2-hour intro and stuff. Still a good game, but I agree, it is definitely overrated. Honestly, Final Fantasy VII is extremely overrated. The story isn't that interesting, and the majority of other elements remain the same from previous entries. In my opinion, it only became so popular because it was the first disc-based Final Fantasy game and launched on the PS1 during its amazing sales point. Just about everyone had a PS1. Most of the ads for FF7 were promoting multiple discs, CG cutscenes, advanced graphics, and so on. FF7 released at the right time and at the right place, but it is by far one of the weaker entries. Oh, I shouldn't have chosen this topic. I want to talk about these things so much. But I disagree. I think the original Final Fantasy VII is actually really freaking special. If we're talking about the remake, I don't think it's crap by any means, but I really don't like the changes they made to the remake. I'll leave it there because I've got a job to do, but god damn it, does it pain me not to talk about this in more detail. The Call of Duty franchise, literally the same game every single time. I may have said it earlier, but I don't like military shooters, unless they have, a gimmick to them like Titanfall 2 or something, but I actually don't think every Call of Duty game is exactly the same. If you go back far enough and then go to where we are now, there have been major changes to the game. Maybe now, more recently, the games are probably being more and more similar, but I don't even see them get released as frequently as they used to be. Death Stranding. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure upon release, the game actually did not sell that well, at least not in Hideo Kojima's eyes. I heard he had a bit of a fit that people didn't really get the game and that he's an auteur and he's ahead of his time, which I like Hideo Kojima, but I think Hideo Kojima, overall, kind of overrated, actually. Especially since he's been, rubbing elbows with, Hollywood actors and directors and stuff and just shoving them haphazardly into his video games. As much as it pains me to say it, I think Minecraft is pretty overrated. Perhaps not the most of all time, but nonetheless so. I have quite a few friends who absolutely refuse to play anything other than Minecraft, just because they are so convinced that it is the best video game of all time, and all others are trash. I definitely don't agree with that, but that isn't the only reason I think it is overrated. Honestly, Minecraft has lost a lot of its charm over the years. The gameplay is simple and not extremely engaging. The only reason I use it today is for creative builds. Also, it was never and still isn't worth $30 goddamn. I actually haven't played Minecraft since it initially came out. My brother got the beta for it. The Binding of Isaac. Meh. It alright. The Binding of Isaac is super good. I love the way that items pile onto each other to make cool mixtures, but I actually prefer one of the creators' earlier games called Gish. Hogwarts Legacy. Yeah, I think that major attempt at boycotting that game just ended up having the reverse effect that people wanted. Red Dead Redemption 2. I have never played a game that someone went to such effort to build a massive, well-engineered and detailed wilderness, only to fill it with so little that it brought me nearly to tears with boredom. But so many people rave about this game, and I will never understand it. Like I said, I've been playing it recently, and I do think it's a good game, but I think this is just the problem with massive open-world games. There is very little that they can do to fill these worlds in a satisfying way that isn't better done than a small, concentrated world where you can absolutely stuff it to the brim with good, solid content. That can then feed into level design, theming for the area, etc. I'm not going to go into this anymore. Shadow of the Colossus. Apart from visuals, the game was a chore to play. I actually prefer Eco a little more than Shadow of the Colossus, but Shadow of the Colossus to me is more like an experience. There's no other game like it. God of War Ragnarok. I'm sorry, but it just didn't do it for me. Completely underwhelming. Felt more like a mountain climbing simulator than anything. And Kratos literally only kills one frickin' god the entire gameplay. WTF. I get he's changing in a different person, but really, the ghost of Sparta needs help to fight Odin's old female dog butt. And sure, he beats Thor the second fight, but he forgives Thor and doesn't want to hurt him, despite Thor trying to kill his son earlier. there. Instead of God of War, I got God of holding hands and licking buttholes. Little bit extreme at the end there, but no, I get where he's coming from. I still stand by that. People try to say that these new games have more depth than the original ones, but I think it's just people didn't really pay attention to the old games. I have no idea if this was considered good, and I've never played a Kojima game, but Death Stranding. I have never experienced a piece of media so far up its own butt. Like 6 minutes of gameplay in the first 2 hours of the game. The biggest challenge in that time was walking in a straight line, utterly confusing menus, the wild swings between characters staring at nothing and explaining nothing, and ham-fisted exposition, a riveting chase scene except the land is shrouded in fog and the monsters are invisible, a soulless world with like 5 people in it, 2 of which have dead or die in their name, who constantly introduce themselves like they aren't the only people we've ever met, and freedom of camera movement during the interminable cutscenes. If you're going to just make a movie, at least give us cinematography. I swear I only played as long as I did because I couldn't believe the game would continue to be so bad. I'm convinced it's End of Evangelion the game, a double middle finger to his fans who will buy anything of his, so he made a pile of nonsense to watch their mental gymnastics explain why the game is secretly genius. The only reason I might be bringing up some games twice is because people are actually explaining why they didn't like it, and I've never played this game, and that's all I really have to say about it. I played every Borderlands game from start to finish and I hated them. I kept assuming they would suddenly get better and I would understand why people loved them. Nope. I admittedly find the writing of Borderlands 3, which was the latest one that I played recently, abysmal, but I think the games have merits. The shooting's fun, the random gun loot is cool, and yeah, they're okay. Hollow Knight. I get it, Metroidvanias aren't for everyone, it's easy to get lost in it, even with the map to some degree, but god damn it, may the power of Christ compel you! Gears of War, Monster Hunter, Final Fantasy. I don't get why these IPs are so popular. Popularize the third-person cover-based shooter, tracking monsters, fighting monsters, building new weapons to fight more monsters out of the monsters that you previously fought is awesome. One of the first video game IPs to tell an engaging and ambitious narrative. First-person shooters. It doesn't matter what the name is, it's all the goddamn same thing, repackaged over and over and over again. Clearly you don't play enough first-person shooters because they do in fact vary wildly. I absolutely love Hunt Showdown because it's a lot more methodical and slow-paced. I don't feel like I can just die the instant I get ambushed a lot of the time because the guns aren't automatic and whatnot. That's just one example of a first-person shooter I like though. Heavy Rain. I know people crap on it now, but it did very well when it first came out. Same with Beyond Two Souls and Detroit Become Human. David Cage is a funny one. I've not played a single one of his games. I can see that he tries to push the envelope a little bit in his own way, but I kind of put him in the same category as Telltale games, where they're games that I will simply watch someone else play. Cuphead. I never understood the appeal of it. To me, it's just a 2D platformer with quick mechanics and old-fashioned animation style and difficult bosses. I don't think it's a bad game, by the way. I've been playing that with my girlfriend lately, and she's so much better than me at it. She's absolutely carrying the team. But I don't know, I think that Cuphead is sort of an instant classic just based on the amount of time and effort that went into it. If you look at the original trailer, it looks so bare bones compared to what it became. Horizon Zero Dawn. I was excited to play this game when it first came out, and honestly I found it tedious and a bit basic and bland. I'd have preferred it to be a linear game as opposed to open world because there isn't enough in the world for it to be that enjoyable. I think that's just it in the end. Open world games. Open world games are overrated. We need to return to smaller, more directed and concentrated areas in games where, like I said earlier, you can concentrate on theming, you can base level design and missions around it. But most of all, I think it's a big part that people do not like about open world games. You can make traversal of the world more engaging. Any battle royale. It was cool at first, then the novelty of it wore off years ago. It is literally a running simulator, and the design of the mode itself promotes people to play like absolute rats and hide in buildings the whole entire frickin' match. Absolute dog crap, trash piece of crap genre that I can't wait to see die so I can wee on its grave. Not sure if I go that far about my feelings of the genre, but I thought it was cool when they made a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure battle royale game, and then I looked at it and it looked kind of crap. Dare I say, Assassin's Creed is a walking simulator with occasional action and stealth tactics. Yeah, I dropped off Assassin's Creed after Brotherhood, admittedly, mostly because I wanted to play the multiplayer, which I still think is actually a really cool multiplayer mode. Ghost of Tsushima. Game was okay, but it was overhyped in my opinion. I actually think Ghost of Tsushima got absolutely robbed for Game of the Year in 2020. Like, Hades was good, but it was in early access for freaking ages. Like, I know it was the official time where it was finished and everything, but I don't think it even deserved to be there because it was in early access for so long. Honestly, I kind of think the only reason The Last of Us 2 actually won Game of the Year in 2020 is because it met all the ESG regulations. PT. Whenever there is talk about horror games, lots of people talk about it as if it is the pinnacle of horror games. Hell, it was a demo of an eventually shelved product. Yo, I don't care what you say. That game was scary as a mother. I literally dropped my control screaming into my full English dinner while playing it with a friend. But it was also quite maddening to figure out how to proceed in that game. In my opinion, probably GoldenEye. I was playing PC games at the time. Quake, Team Fortress was already out, and my expectations were built up by people who hadn't played an FPS before. Same type of thing happened when Halo released on Xbox, and people acted like it was the first game with LAN play. Had trouble deciding between GoldenEye and Halo, but I at least had some fun with Halo games. GoldenEye always felt like a clumsy attempt to me. I have never had a good time playing GoldenEye, so I agree. What fact are you just tired of explaining to people? That I'm not lonely or sad, I just like to spend time by myself. That being deaf really means I can't hear you at all. All the shouting doesn't help me to hear you. The difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Any type of diet, plants, or hocus-pocus voodoo isn't going to cure my cancer. It's a chromosome switch, so unless they can switch my chromosomes back into the right places, it's not happening. That reminds me of how, Steve Jobs died. Apparently he was a real believer in alternative medicine, and then he, got a transplant of an organ or something that he needed that he should have done at the very beginning, but then he wasted so much time on, alternative medicines that when he got the transplant, it just meant nothing. Correlation doesn't equal causation. I'm in IT. That does not mean I can single-handedly make a game or large-scale software. At the same time, I also cannot hack the Pentagon or release encrypted files from another hacker. Also, side note, while I was reinstalling Windows for you, I did not break your toaster and radio on opposite sides of the house and have no idea how to repair them or your microwave. Okay, thanks, bye. Going up a tax bracket doesn't result in a pay cut. That having the money to buy something doesn't mean you can afford it. Oh boy, is that a good one, and oh boy, is that one that I'd hear from my mom a lot when I wanted toys as a kid. As a speech and language therapist, I'm responsible for somebody's safe swallow to prevent aspiration, pneumonia, or choking. There is more to my profession than teaching a child to stop stuttering. Gifts must be reported to the IRS if they are over 17 grand. Gifts over 12.92 million in the giver's lifetime are taxable, and the giver has to pay the tax. They tax gifts to avoid rich people dodging estate taxes by giving everything away before they die. ADHD is real. Adults can have it too, and it's not cured by a belt, just trying or cutting back on caffeine and sugar. It's actually very debilitating at times and is the primary contributor to a lot of problems that adults with it struggle with. It's extremely hard to find the help you need past a certain age because even the medical industry has a terrible understanding of adult ADHD. And no, not everyone is a little bit ADHD. Parts of the brain are literally underdeveloped due to lagging behind while developing. It literally prevents me from being able to redirect my attention and tune out background noises. It makes my default mode network, the part of the brain that chatters when you are at rest not doing anything, incessantly chatter in my head all day, every day. It makes the part of my brain responsible for inhibiting emotions or thoughts extremely difficult. It's mentally exhausting. It prevents the part of my brain responsible for motivation from functioning correctly. It's not laziness. It's literally my brain not being able to communicate with itself properly to get me to take action. And yes, it literally affects my mood and my displays of emotions. It's not bipolar. I just can't regulate how I show normal emotions effectively. If I blow up at you when you make me angry, it's not anger problems. I literally can't hold myself back unless I am getting the help I need to manage the ADHD. And yes, that means stimulant substances for me. No, it's not an illegal substance. Yes, it functions similar to that, but It calms me down because I am chronically understimulated and my brain takes over seeking stimulation, hyperactivity, chatter, daydreaming, etc. Stimulants put me on even footing with everyone else. I likely try harder than you every day with everything I do because I start the race with my feet tied and a mile behind the starting line. So stop telling me that I just don't try hard enough. And please educate yourself. ADHD is the most well-researched and studied disorder on Earth, and too many people don't believe it exists. No, it wasn't invented in the 70s by a man who said he made it up. There are over 200-year-old medical journals detailing it. The grandfather of medicine, Hippocrates, has writings describing patients that are believed to be the earliest recorded instances of ADHD, and the treatment he gave them line up with herbs, vitamins, and minerals that tend to help ADHD the most. And that's from the 4th century BC. It's not a made-up problem from 50 years ago.
That all checks out. I've got ADHD. It does suck some days. But it also affects people wildly differently.
That awful poor planning on their part does not constitute an emergency on mine.
That most recycling ends up in the landfill. You are not being environmentally friendly just because you recycle. Reducing and reusing are much, much better for the environment. Recycling is the last resort. Only one small step up from garbage. The importance of privacy, why governments and companies should not spy on us unless when the people whose data is stolen are not citizens of their country. And together with the above, not because someone posts things on the internet and has a public life, does it give others the right to interfere in their private life. That just because I'm black does not mean that I'm an expert or the go-to guy on all things African American. Seriously. Along those lines, I can like a woman who's not black because of qualities she has that have nothing to do with her skin color or ethnic background, or not like a black woman because of the same things. If she's from Mumbai and would actually listen to me argue with someone why Professor X could use his mental blast to take out a Mark II Sentinel and get me another beer instead of head for the door, why does it matter what her hair color is or where her people are from? She likes me enough to put up with my BS. Why should I look for someone that you think I should be with to make you happy with who should be with whom? Just saying. This sounds like a rather personal matter. I'm sorry that your mother is maybe racist and unable to see that you've maybe made a actual connection with someone.
I'm not Chinese. I don't speak Vietnamese or Chinese. Yes, I'm Irish.
18 years of reinforced go to college and you'll get a good job growing up has led to an entire generation of adults who are on average more educated than prior generations when the number of jobs that would actually require those educations have not really increased in any significant number. So now, more roles that don't actually need the education can still ask for it and get candidates with that education requirement applying because they can't get anything else. Add on the fact that tuition rates have been increasing at a much higher rate than inflation since at least the 80s, while Uncle Sam happily foots the upfront costs, and you wind up with a generation of people with significant debt making less than their expected income that can't afford to pay it off. Don't forget to add in that public schools don't, or at least didn't about 15 years ago when I graduated, have any mandatory classes to teach about loans in general, student loans, interest, etc. So kids signed up for these loans with only a very vague idea of what they were signing up for. And finally, even if Biden's debt forgiveness passes, which I hope it does, as it will definitely help people, it will still do nothing to address the underlying issue and actually solve any problem. It will just put a band-aid over the issue for another year. Now, I by no means have a horse in the American political race, and you're the one who brought it up, but I just thought I'd ask. How's Vote Blue No Matter Who working out for you?
That you are responsible for your own actions.
Just because something offends you doesn't mean it's gotta go.
The McDonald's coffee lawsuit lady was very justified in winning her case. Longitude and latitude and GPS and how it simply would not work if the earth was flat.
That you don't have to be white to be racist. There are non-white racists too. To add to that, 1, there's no reverse racism, it's just racism. And 2, just because you're black doesn't mean you're not racist towards black people. That's literally the point of characters like Uncle Ruckus.
Stop setting yourself up for failure because you demand perfection. Actually accomplishing something to a B+ level is infinitely better than having not done it. Can't clean the kitchen until it's spotless under a microscope? Cool. Load up the dishwasher until it's full and run it. Way better than living in filth. Can't stick to a 5-day-a-week workout and super healthy diet? Fine. Do twice a week and cut out the 3 worst foods and you'll be massively ahead of where you were.
Basically, incremental improvements in your life will eventually lead to larger scale improvements in your life. I once heard that apparently you need to stick to something for about 30 days in a row before you just start doing it automatically with ease.
The vast majority of religious believers cringe just as hard as you do and wish the loud extremist minority would go away and shut up just like you. It's a shame that so many people assume first which religion and second that these discussions don't already take place within the communities of these religions. They do. The difference is neither side is smart enough to realize that screaming your belief into others' faces will never actually work. It only makes you the savage you think you are disagreeing with. And it really sucks that I need to extrapolate on this, because people still want to assume the worst and shout their beliefs into another's face. I mean, there are morally reprehensible people in any kind of group you can name, social, religious, whatever, but the fact of the matter is, the world would be a whole lot better if people would just come out and say, yes, there are morally reprehensible people in our groups and we all need to work together to call those people out and hopefully make the world a better place, and we can all maybe, learn to tolerate each other just a little bit more than we have been lately. Censoring speech is the first step towards oppression of all society. That unlikely things do happen, such as people getting lucky or someone bragging about something unique. It appears as if lots of people stubbornly live under a rock and refuse to accept the fact that everyone has a life of their own. The 8 billion people on this planet do not exist as carbon copies of your life. That you can disagree with someone and still be friends. You can also have different political beliefs and be friends. Opinions are not facts. That intention does not negate impact. That touching a baby animal won't make the parents reject it. It's an old wives' tale / myth to keep children from messing with wild baby animals. I still see so many people argue about this. I'm not sure if it is true or not. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. I mean, the people that say it is true actually give examples. Feminism is equality and against bias towards genders. It doesn't mean to hate men. That is the opposite of the definition of feminism. I am Sikh, not Muslim. Those are your dog's nipples. Yes, male dogs have nipples. The laws of supply and demand apply to labor, so you can't import millions of people without driving wages down. Han shot first. It's been ages since I saw the original cut of Star Wars, and it's so weird that they change it with each iteration that they decide to pump out or whatever, but it makes him a more interesting character if he shoots first, rather than waiting to be attacked. Micro pigs aren't real. It's just a starved pot-belly pig. Gonna get buried, but just chipping in, there is a massive difference to listening and waiting your turn to talk. Most people are waiting for their turn to talk, interrupt soon as a thought comes into their mind, or only latch onto one small thing that they heard and ignore the rest. The worst people are those who just try to drown out your voice by talking louder than anyone else. Listening is a valuable skill. Please learn to listen. That innocent until proven guilty is a legal concept. It means while being tried in a court of law, the judge or jury need to be unbiased and believe the person is innocent until the burden of proof is met. It does not mean the person is actually innocent. If I see someone commit a crime, I don't have to say they are innocent until convicted. I know they did it. A person can absolutely be guilty, but the legal burden was not met. And again, that does not mean they should be treated as though they did not do it outside of the justice system.
Just because I'm old doesn't mean I'm out of touch. My son's trans and I've supported his transition. Also came out as bisexual at the age of 58. A lot of us old folks want to see the change you kids are going to make in the world.
Politics isn't simple like you think it is. There are no simple answers. That all dating apps are designed to get money from you and that they don't care if you find anyone. They prey on those who are weak, who think spending money will help them find dates. Dating apps have ruined people's self-esteem and dating in general. It's true, a large swath of society needs to readjust and, try and take part in actual human contact to find partners again. If you regularly use dating apps, that's fine, but honestly, it doesn't really prepare you for, conversational skills in person or anything like that, which are very, very critical. Every generation has its share of greedy buttholes and grifters. Things aren't going to magically get better when the boomers all die. That the 2020 election was fair and not stolen. Electric cars won't save us from climate change, and we've been duped by car manufacturers. We need walkable cities yesterday.
That just because the research study reports a statistic does not mean it is generalizable to the entire population. Most research studies are done on a population in a given area. The area then are typically randomized to get a sample from that population. That means that if a researcher is doing a study and uses one specific country, state, job, place, or whatever, they are only studying that specific population, which implies that if you were to do that study on a different population in a different place, there could be very different results based on the different demographics of that specific population. For example, if you were to do a study on the average political beliefs of people in the southern states, you cannot imply that the results would be the same as the average political beliefs of people in the northern states. Most people who perform research or are knowledgeable and have taken a class in statistics are aware of this. However, I know many people who just raffle off a statistic that clearly supports their specific opinion or belief, without
looking at all the other research that may have disproven that said finding, or they don't realize that the one statistic is only specific to one population.
Nuclear energy is a waste of time and a colossal waste of money.
Pollution from coal power kills more people every day than nuclear has in its entire history.
That life isn't a bunch of dichotomies and extremes. I can consider Donald Trump to be the worst president in U.S. history and still not vote for or even like Joe Biden. I can recognize that Maryland's SB 0001 is a dumb law and still not be a long-range killing device lover. I can prefer to eat my pizza without pineapples and still not think that pepperoni is the only acceptable pizza topping.
This is literally the best answer in this entire goddamn thread. My god, this topic is a bit of a down and I have to comment on every now and then because a lot of this stuff is just like opinion-based, or they're only saying 1 to maybe 8 word answers that I don't really want to extrapolate on. That anxiety is not just all in your head.
Yes, there is a damn rule that stops everybody from playing basketball, or more accurately, there's no rule that allows it, and basketball rules are a list of what you can do. Anything not included is prohibited.
The ducks at the park are free.
Because my dad is a math teacher doesn't make me automatically good at maths.
So, my name is Maurice, and ever since Madagascar came out, I keep having to explain to people that Mort is the one with the foot fetish, not Maurice. Your migraine headache is not a migraine. When I have a migraine, my head doesn't just hurt. My pupils dilate so uncontrollably, I effectively go blind, vomit uncontrollably, piercing neck pain, and occasionally I hallucinate. Yeah, I cannot stress enough how, different a migraine is to a headache. It's true. Frankenstein was the goddamn doctor! There is a difference between an excuse and an explanation. Also, that most times effect carries more weight than intent. That first part, right? So I'll mess up in some way and I'll be like, yeah, totally my fault, I did this and that, and they'll be like, no, stop making excuses. What are you talking about? I'm taking the blame. I'm just explaining how it happened. The phrase is, I couldn't care less. Saying, I could care less opposes the point you are trying to make. That not every evergreen tree is a pine tree. Some of them are spruce, cedar, fir, or even tamaracks. Homeless and unhoused can't just get a job. There's so many factors that are unaddressed in that ignorance.
Atheism is not Satanism. If I don't believe in your imaginary friend, why would I believe in your imaginary enemy?
The left lane is for passing, not cruising.
The president doesn't control the gas prices.
That is absolutely true. And yet the decisions made by an incompetent, quote-unquote, leader of the free world can ripple and change the world exponentially. Frankly, I just wish it was never always down to some stupid two-party system.
I'm gay myself. I get stupid questions, like if I have ever tried being straight, or insecure women who think I want their men, or insecure men who think I want them, etc. Rinse and repeat. It's not the most interesting aspect of who I am. In fact, I don't think it's interesting at all. I can't decorate. I don't know crap about fashion. I'm just a regular guy who happens to occasionally date other guys. Currently single. I'm fine with that.
Now, just because the fact doesn't agree with your political statement doesn't make it any less true. Doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you are on. Just because I have ADHD doesn't mean I can't sit still for an extended period of time. ADHD affects different people differently. Well, it certainly makes it difficult for me to sit still for an extended period of time.
The Dark Side of the Moon is a Pink Floyd album. The moon no more has a dark side than the earth does. It has days and nights, 2 weeks long. It does have a far side.
The entire medical profession, or at least the 98th percentile, misunderstands addiction. Alcoholism, gambling, sex, illegal substances, overeating, even religion. Any of them. Doesn't matter. The medical profession thinks the reason the patients are addicted is, number 1, they don't understand the harm they're doing to their bodies and society. If we could just explain it to them, they'd stop. No, we understand. We're under siege with pamphlets, after-school specials, news programs, medical personnel telling us, plus a billion advertisements, MADD, and such on the harm it causes. Number 2, it's just a lack of willpower. No, it's not a lack of willpower. Lots of very high-functioning people in other aspects of their lives, heads of industry, CEOs of corporations, and very successful sports, football people also suffer from addiction. Number 3, they're living the dream already.
already and just want to experiment to see how much better life can be. No, sorry, not that one either. Well, maybe if you're 16 to 18 and life is wonderful, that's true, but it's not true for anyone over 30 to 90 years old. For most of the people with addiction problems, life sucks beyond the imagining, and they just want to have the tiniest bit of control to dull the pain to a manageable level. Dr. Sarah.
Bob, I've explained all the advantages and disadvantages to you. I really think you ought to agree to the skin grafts to fix your burns. Do you not understand the harm that could happen if we don't deal with this? Do you not have the willpower to survive the operation and recovery?
Bob. No, Dr. Sarah, that's not my problem. My problem is that I still live in the house and the frickin' house is still on fire. If we go through the pain and expense of the skin graft, 5 minutes later, I'll be right back in the same circumstances that put me here in the first place. And if by some miracle you can convince Dr. Sarah that your life won't ever change to get you out of the fire, they fall back on the,
well, then why are you whining about it? Why don't you do something to get out of the fire?
Because, Dr. Sarah, my grandfather has Alzheimer's, my mother has stage 4 inoperable pancreatic cancer, my son, little Timmy, is severely autistic, and daughter, Betty Sue, has incurable Parkinson's. Which of those 4 problems can you fix for me, Doc, to reduce the stress and pain in my life to a manageable level? The entire medical profession doesn't understand that addiction isn't about the thing you're addicted to or the effect it has on you or other people's lives. It's usually about medicating unsolvable problems to a bearable level, and until everyone understands the problem, we have no hope of solving it.
Why forums like these make me really angry when they just become a moan fest for people with insecurities, faux depression, and other mental disorders they want the whole world to know about. This person is totally right, but, everyone needs some method of getting their frustrations out. Both political parties in the US are just as corrupt and self-serving. Most, if not all, high-ranking politicians have lost touch with what it is to be the average human being. They pander to us, put us against each other, and pretend the other party is the enemy and they truly want to make life better for us. They don't give a crap about us. They think they're royalty and we're all peasants. When American politics comes up, I always think about the Stampy the Elephant episode of The Simpsons where it goes on a rampage and it goes to the Republic Convention Center and there are banners hung up all saying, "We want what's worse for everyone. We're just plain evil." And then it goes to the Democrat Convention Center and it says, "We hate life and ourselves and we can't govern." This one was honestly so hard to goddamn sift through because it was all just political opinions or people complaining about their chronic health issues. I was hoping for more scientific facts or myths and stuff that people come up with. Boys, be completely honest. What makes a girl go from a 10 out of 10 to a 1 out of 10 instantly? Was on a first date once with what seemed like a sweet girl and she then bragged to me how she and her best friends would go to clubs and hit on ugly guys to lead them on, then laugh at them for thinking they had a chance. She was actually proud of this. Constantly complaining about everything and everything. There has to be something you enjoy. That or never taking responsibility for your own faults and always having to blame someone else for it. My last boyfriend did this, my last boyfriend did that. Well, damn, girl, why don't you go back to your last boyfriend then?
Fellow men, please, you gotta stop doing such nice things for your girls. It makes the rest of us look bad when we can't exactly keep up with a standard.
I'm joking, of course. It absolutely sucks to be constantly compared to someone else that you are not. Mine is the same as another earlier comment. Had been seeing a smoking hot woman. Looked like a Robert Palmer girl. Then she kicked my cat. What was funny was Bip the cat then stalked and attacked her by leaping from a chair and latching onto her arm. You didn't mess with Bip the cat. He was my bro. 1. Physical violence. 2. Infidelity. 3. Illegal substance abuse. 4. Scientology. 5. Needless cruelty. Treating restaurant staff badly, dishonesty, manipulative behavior. I was seeing someone much more attractive than anyone I've ever dated before. She was pretty chill and interesting, and on our 3rd date, we went to my favorite restaurant and she was rude to the staff. I was so embarrassed that not only did I break up with her, I went back to the restaurant afterwards to apologize. Service work sucks enough without someone being awful. I'm a little mad and embarrassed now, a year later, thinking about that awful date. You know what? I'd probably break up with them too. If that's your favorite restaurant and you know the staff, that would be super embarrassing. I'd be mortified. If they feel the need to do a TikTok dance in the middle of busy public areas. 1. Playing on the phone while having an in-person conversation. 2. Littering. 3. Being a crappy parent.
No hobbies. I don't want someone who wants me to entertain them. I want someone who has their own life and their own friends and doesn't feel abandoned if I want to spend time on my own or going out with my own friends. Yeah, I gotta hard agree on that one. If someone doesn't have any friends or hobbies or anything like that to preoccupy their own time and they're constantly just like, no, I need you for company and entertainment and everything because I have no one, it can be really unhealthy for a relationship. Had a girl once who basically assumed that not constantly texting was akin to no interest at all. Any time after the conversation would naturally go stale, or after a pause in replies, I would get a, "What are you up to?" or "What's up?" And of course, I'd just be honest and say, "Browsing Reddit, haha." Like, there's only so many ways you can make one's downtime be interesting for a conversation's sake. Ironically enough, that was one of the many factors that did contribute to me losing interest in her. It is exhausting being someone's sole source of happiness and entertainment. I was in love with a girl when I was a teen. I was smitten. She was a 10 out of 10. She had a cat. One day, it made her mad, and she grabbed the cat and hurled it against the wall. I instantly despised her from there on. Since she lived close, I also stole said cat a few weeks later. She didn't deserve Muffin. I renamed him afterward. I don't think she ever noticed. I didn't talk to her anymore. Had a date a few weeks ago. We agreed to meet at a local restaurant that has 2 locations. She wanted to go to the closer one by the highway. To be fair, I was about 3 or 4 minutes late, but I walked in and she wasn't there. She actually went to the wrong one, but she got mad at me for it. I attempted to salvage the date and we agreed to order takeout and meet at her place. The address she gave me was wrong. She lived at Street Place, and the address she told me was Street Drive, which are about 15 minutes away from each other. She's messaging me about how impatient she's getting the whole time I'm trying to decipher where I'm supposed to go. I don't text and drive, and she got upset that I wasn't responding to her. So 1 gets upset with you for their mistake. 2 gets upset with you for their mistake. 3 gets mad at you that you aren't endangering yourself and others by texting and driving. One time I dated this girl I met from Tinder. We went on adventures like hiking and rollerblading, and it was getting a little more serious. We slept together after the 3rd date, and I wanted to see her again the next day after we both worked because I fall easily and become like monogamous after our sex. So we go to work, and afterward we decide to go to the bar with some of my friends. I wanted to introduce her to them and kind of flex, show her off a bit. We get there, and I swear to God, when she met my friend Jesse, she completely ignored me for the rest of the night and left with him. They ended up getting together and split after a few months, and she had the gall to text me to hang out again after. I think I'm still emotionally scarred from that. She was perfect with just the 2 of us, and then she had zero loyalty to me in a social setting. To be fair, I never communicated that I wanted us to be exclusive, but I still felt betrayed by both of them. That is now my biggest flag I look for. Yeah, buddy, Jesse is clearly not a friend. And to be absolutely honest, if I met a woman who then went on to try and flirt and have sex with my friends afterwards, I would be like, nope, you're a problem, get the hell out of here. Girls who think using an Android phone is a deal breaker. Saying really mean stuff about people they just hung out with. Inability to be accountable or apologize, being rude to service industry folk, no self-awareness, generally being a spoiled or narcissistic person. Overly obsessed with the devil's lettuce. I don't care if people want to have a smoke to wind down at the end of a workday, but if it's your only hobby and topic of conversation, it gets boring real fast. She continually tells me throughout the date that I'm small enough that she could probably bench press me. It happened. She wouldn't stop repeating it. It got real annoying real fast. I was picturing the pig from Duckman saying that. I can't remember his... Corn-fed. Anyway, just a personal thing. Is anyone else like really tired of the simping for like muscular women or like muscular characters in fiction and stuff? With the whole like, oh, break me like you're baited, I am the Batman mummy, please. It's just so incredibly cringe. Being dumb as a brick. If she doesn't know what she's talking about and likes to argue a lot. The princess attitude in general, but most specifically when it comes to finances. Don't get me wrong, I want to buy/do nice things for my girlfriend, but I hate doing things like that because they are expected of me. I want to do them because I want to do them and make people I care about happy. The second I get, you can't afford me vibes, I am out. We probably don't have much in common anyway, and I want a partner, not an extra expense. Life is hard enough without a constant attitude and headache when they don't get everything they want. Acting malicious towards the elders, animals, or children. Victim mentality. Someone who doesn't take responsibility for her own mistakes. 0 out of 10 when the individual must have a phone in hand in order to showcase everything we're doing whilst doing it. Under the guise of sharing. Put down your phone when you're with another human being. Everything that was on the web will still be there when you return to it. And all the new stuff? Well, that'll be there too. I too hate that. Am I guilty of it sometimes because, well, a lot of my work is online and whatnot? Yes, but it's becoming more of a generational issue. When she tries to make me believe that all of her exes were abusive, deadbeats, cheaters, and man-children, and she had absolutely no role in her past relationships falling apart. I mean, in all fairness, just about anyone can do that. Bad hygiene, i.e. bad breath, bad body odor, dirty fingernails. When they just trauma dump on you relatively quickly after meeting, I get it, and I want to be emotionally available, but sometimes it's just too much too soon.
When she turns out to be actually just 3 kids in a trench coat.
I know that's just an old joke in general with a bunch of kids pretending to be an adult man or woman or whatever, but I can't help but think, are they specifically referencing BoJack Horseman? Unapologetic alcoholism. I can't hang with a woman who regularly passes out drunk at 9 p.m. and then goes to work at 6 a.m., even if she's totally functional. If they use my gender as a weapon against me, like,
why don't you act like a man? Or, man up and do it. Or, a real man would be able to.
I have fortunately not experienced this directed at me by a date or girlfriend, but I have heard women say this about other guys. Screw that. Screw you for saying that. I'm part of a group that conducts research on psychology of men and masculinity. I know exactly how far this goes to keeping men trapped in the worst versions of masculinity and masculine behavior. These statements that are aimed at hurting men are just the worst kind of manipulative, awful behaviors, and most people don't even realize how bad it is. But it's like I've seen too much. I know how much it affects things at a societal level, not to mention how personally insulting it is. A vegan who looks down on and actively attacks non-vegans. Just for context, I'm vegetarian. It was hard enough for me to become vegetarian after 20 years of shoving chicken tenders and sushi down my gullet. Went on a date with a 10 out of 10 girl to a casual dining restaurant, and I dared to have cheese in my food. She scolded me, publicly raised her voice and everything. People looked at us to see what the fuss was about. The rest of the conversation, her body language consisted of judgment and eye rolls. Mind you, this was the first date. She still asked me if I wanted to go back to her place that night. It was a big nope. Oh my God, you cannot control what someone else wants to put in their body as much as you'd like to. You just can't. Unless, of course, I guess that person is killing themselves, literally, with the amount of crap that they're shoveling down their gullet, in which case, if it's not that, you're probably just a butt of a human being, or a control freak. Materialism, luxury brands, inability to have a philosophical or abstract conversation. Being a litter bug.
When she says anything along the lines of, my presence is a present.
Cigarettes. Emotional immaturity, inability to properly communicate her problems or feelings, inability to take accountability and remediate bad behavior or actions, narcissism, and all those fun dark triad traits, inability to take constructive criticism, the list goes on.
1, star signs, just don't. 2, posting multiple selfies a day on social media. I hate myself too much to be with someone that narcissistic. 3, live, love, laugh, merchandise. Basic. 4, loves drinking. Personal reason. I'm a recovering alcoholic who's currently sober. 5, likes having sex with people who aren't me. I'm just a monogamous person. Sue me. 6, treat their family like crap. Different if it's with abusive family members. 7, overspending on luxury items. I'm a simple man and a thrifty woman like my GF are a turn on. She finds bargains like bloodhounds find bodies. 8, highly extroverted. I'm highly introverted. I can't be around people of any gender with that much social energy. 9, overly touchy. Even in a platonic way, just a personal space thing. 10, persecution complex. Just shows a lack of accountability when their crappy lives are everyone else's fault. It's 2023, sort your crap out, nobody's stopping you. 11, born and raised in a religious cult. Another personal one for me, long story. 12, ridiculously long acrylic nails. Other than getting in the way of wearing gloves for a dirty job or the sound they make when they hit solid objects, I really have no other reason. I really like my back scratchies, but not when they draw blood. 13,
Upspeak goes both genders. Basically, just a sign that your personality is undeveloped. Sorry if a lot of that makes me sound like a douche, but they asked for honesty and I honestly sat down for like 20 minutes to think about all of this.
Honestly, astrology is up there. Not like a mild interest or anything, but if you make real decisions based off it and really believe, honestly, the same kind of goes for any spiritual or religious stuff, but the people I know only do astrology. Probably the exact same things that take a guy from a 10 to a 1. Just being a crappy person pretty much destroys physical attractiveness regardless of gender. Yeah, I do agree with this person. It's just that people decided, oh, it's gonna be a boys topic. Yeah, get the boys in here.
Whipping out a bigger Johnson than mine. Silent treatment and emotional manipulation. Grow up and talk about your feelings. But talk, not scream or yell when it's advantageous, but silent treatment when it's not. Take 5, have a breath, and come back and talk.
Racism, size queen, and serious substance abuse.
Ignorance.
Smoking.
Smoking. On the surface, smoking and those fake nails. I cannot express how much I hate fake nails. Inside, aggressive tendencies, infidelity, lying, arrogance, and ignorance.
So everyone here is saying smoking, but I do wonder if they consider vaping to be the same thing, because I know so many people who are like, oh, smoking and vaping, it's not the same thing. It's nothing alike. And it's like, yeah, no, it's the same thing. Personally, I don't really give a crap. Narcissism. Oh, mate, I'm sorry to say, but narcissism is like a freaking epidemic nowadays. Treating others like crap, lacks any form of empathy or any human decency whatsoever, manipulator, is a cheater, hates animals, dogs, cats, etc., displays narcissistic tendencies, being too self-centered/egotistical to the point you constantly put others down to feel better, continues to smoke/vape, just a preference since I don't like to surround myself with people who could give me lung cancer, is a far right-winger, yeah, no thanks. Went on a date with a girl about 8 or 9 years ago, not necessarily a 10 out of 10, but I was interested. Until she asked how much money I made. At the time, it wasn't much, maybe $40K, but she made it very clear that her 5-year plan was to marry a guy that makes good money, have a kid or 2, and be a stay-at-home mom. She was a pediatric nurse making $100K by herself. She was willing to give that up just so she could stay at home as a housewife/mom. Last I checked, she's still single. When they're gorgeous, but arrogant about it. Dated a girl that always talked down on other women or criticized their appearance. Even if we were just watching a TV show, I had to hear her dissect exactly which aspects of which female character's face she didn't like. Ugh. Nothing. If she's really a 10 out of 10 and is willing to settle for little old me, then as far as I'm concerned, I'll overlook the whole serial killer thing. I mean, she's a 10, right? Who am I to judge? No amount of pretty is worth 1 ounce of drama. Women who throw food or drink containers out of the car. You know, I totally get it. It's relevant to what your principles are, what you respect, what you don't respect, your likes and dislikes, whatever. But some of these, a lot of these, have really not even been relevant to gender or anything. I was really expecting, like, right off the bat, if she treats me like crap and then blames her period or something like that. That is something that is only relevant to women. She didn't like dogs, particularly my Labrador, objecting to him being inside the house and sleeping at the foot of my bed on the floor. Said it was either him or her sleeping outside. I gave her a blanket to keep warm. Constantly talking about other people's business or regularly saying bad things about people when they are not around. I understand a little gossip here and there, but it is repulsive to me when someone constantly talks about someone else's life in a harsh or judgmental way. Main character syndrome, turning every interaction into something about themselves. Announcing that they strive to become an influencer. Talking about other guys' peckers and past SX lives. Biggest turnoff for me. I keep my past in the past and I don't talk about my experiences with other women to them. Keep it classy. Septum piercings. I completely get that one. Septum piercings are such a hit or miss look depending on the person. Realistically, nothing. Every single person who has weighed in on this has lied to you. Once you breach a certain level of hot, basically, anything goes. You'll ignore as many red flags as you need. You'll start making excuses for behaviors you despise and make excuses for why you've done so. Desire drives people to every compromise you can think of, and we're all capable of doing horrible things to ourselves for someone we think deserves it. You know, personally, I actually do agree agree with this one. I have seen people, like, fall over themselves for a pretty face and, like, just go against the things that, as far as I knew about them, they believed quite strongly in. But then, pretty lady walks in. Whenever a really pretty lady talks to me and is very clear that she knows how pretty she is and she thinks she can basically get me to say or do whatever she wants, it immediately turns me off, to be honest, because, I don't know, I hate giving things to people who expect it. And yes, that does in fact include gratification. Bad manners. Being a Disney adult. Assuming I can read their mind. If you can't handle me at my worst, then you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best. Ooh, I hate that too. I hate that so goddamn much. Everything about that saying I despise.
Telling stories about how she completely ruined someone's day in a personal and targeted way for minorly inconveniencing her in the course of doing their goddamn job. No, I am not impressed at how petty you are prepared to be to someone who made a minor mistake.
If she's that hot, nothing could do it instantly, short of witnessing her murder someone. Instead, it will be a gradual process as the brain starts doing the thinking again.
Any variation of the you should already know / I shouldn't have to tell you why. I'm not a psychic. I'm not here to play a goddamn guessing game. If you're incapable of having a rational, grown-up conversation about your feelings, I'm out. Played that game too many times and I'm sick of it.
One word replies. When I was on dating apps, I saw that a bunch where it'd be like, I love engaging good conversation. And it's like you attempt to have a conversation with them about something, but they don't do anything to actually move the conversation along or expand upon it. They just use one-word replies. Yeah, I agree with that. It's infuriating. Constantly throwing pity parties. Not a dude, but I am bi/pan. So number 1, hard illegal substances. Number 2, cheating. Number 3, putting the toilet paper roll on backwards. Don't tell me there isn't a right way, because there absolutely is. Number 4, saying things like, I'm not like other girls, or girls just don't like me for some reason. I get along better with guys.
Crystals and horoscopes.
I think I've actually seen too many people poo-poo on, like, astrology or tarot. Like, I don't put much stock in it. I know how to read a tarot and stuff like that. It's just a fun thing to do. I think people probably think that the people who actually like that stuff take it more seriously than they actually do. And if they do take it that seriously, then yeah, I kind of get being a bit annoyed by it.
Breathing with their mouth open.
Ghetto talk / slang. I was dating this girl for a while until one date while we were driving back from the restaurant, she opened a chocolate bar and threw the paper through the window.
Getting hit with a frying pan.
That one does indeed suck.
Herpes.
When they act like they're doing you a favor by letting you have sex with them.
When she pees on your floor and vomits in your bed.
Being with a chick that was a 10 when I was 19 only lasted 6 months because she always told me to open up to her and be emotional. Then when I went through some hard times and finally opened up and she started making fun of me and calling me a lady's nether regions and whatnot. Knew she was mentally unstable from then on. Once we broke up, she did the old I tried to self-delete myself because I can't live without you. Psychopath. Too much makeup and wearing revealing clothes all the time. I want a girl who is proud of their natural beauty. Fake trendy accent. I still get accused of that every once in a blue moon. No sense of humor. Burps and farts. Bare feet on car dashboard. I imagine this person did not enjoy Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Nonetheless, I agree.
What are your dating regrets?
Getting so caught up in the fun early stages of the relationship and planning activities for dates that I forgot to just relax and be myself. Take it a week at a time and see how things went. Pretty sure it made me seem too pushy, so things didn't end very well for me. Lesson learned. Chill the F out.
The holy trinity of bad dating. 1, not listening when they told me they weren't interested. 2, not listening when they told me they were crazy. 3, not listening to myself when I realized I didn't want to be with someone anymore. This is the first time I've ever spelled it out for myself like this, and I think I'm seeing a pattern.
That I admittedly hid some of my hobbies and interests because I was scared they looked dorky. As soon as I stopped hiding it, I met my partner.
Don't be afraid to show your hobbies or your interests to your girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other, whatever. Just, if they like you for who you are. And if they don't like you because of something as silly as a hobby or an interest that you have, then they don't really like you.
Not taking chances with various girls and women throughout my life when I had the opportunities to. And I didn't try to date more in my early 20s, and now I'm in my mid-30s with a combined relationship experience of a little over a year. I basically have the romantic intelligence of a 16-year-old.
Shooting more shots and being way more confident in my 20s. I was a very good-looking guy with very low self-esteem. Funny to look back at now I'm 46.
So far, my biggest regret was moving halfway across the country with someone, and when I was struggling to adjust to that location, they refused to move a few hours for me to a different location. That really hurt. Felt like I gave up so much for them, and it turns out they wouldn't do the same for me. I'll never move for love again. Another thing about this relationship, and a warning to others, is that if a person says they hadn't spent enough time being single before y'all got together, just break it off so they can do their thing. While it might be hard to give up on something good, the feeling of regret for not getting to experience more opportunities and meet more people will constantly be in the back of their head. I could go on, but the point is to have clear communication. That also means that if someone tells you something, actually listen to what they're saying and don't just hear what you want to hear. I always used to say, always give them at least one date to make their case, and you can decide after if you want to continue. Some people are so obviously a walking red or black flag of personality issues that even a single afternoon will be too much time to waste. Just decline and move on. 2. Don't stay with someone because of how they used to make you feel or because you owe them for something they did a long time ago. Staying in a dying relationship doesn't make breaking up later any better and doesn't make you happy now. Also, not my personal mess up, but marriage and or kids won't fix a weak relationship. If it's dying and nobody really cares, get it over with and move on. Number 3. Not mine, but I've seen it firsthand enough. Some people have issues, and while these aren't deal breakers themselves, you shouldn't enter into a dating relationship for the purpose to be free of therapy or to fix them/date people that will fix you. People need to be in a place where they are able to date others, not go looking for someone to fix them or prey on broken people. And if you are with someone that becomes too much baggage, you can stay to help, you can leave if it gets above your pay grade, but you have to make sure you are taken care of too.
I give this a 7 out of 10.
Solid advice.
The fact that I'm not very good at it.
Giving my best to the wrong person.
Letting them get away with bad behaviors, being overly romantic and giving to someone who doesn't do the same, overly apologizing even when I didn't do anything inherently wrong, begging someone to stay. I screwed over someone who truly loved me, pushed her away when it was my time to step up. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. She was such a catch. Married now. I should have been more open about my feelings with those I was interested in back around high school and early adulthood because I'm pretty sure a few may have been interested in me, but things just never got started. I should have cut communication once I found out she had been cheating on me since the start of our relationship, instead of doing some on-again, off-again bullcrap for a decade or so. You know, as someone who's personally witnessed very many on-again, off-again relationships, they are one of the most frustrating things to bear witness to, especially when your friend goes from top of the world to as low as can possibly be in such a short amount of time. And now, I'm not saying that people can't make mistakes in relationships, get back together, and then, actually learn from that mistake and be better, but, you need to have a certain degree of self-awareness and recognize what the actual issues are. Like, if you're sat at home, you're like, damn, I want to get back with my girl, or damn, I want to get back with my man. Just have a freaking anime character arc for at least 5 months or something. Think about what the actual issues were. Think about yourself. Think about them. Judge whether or not it's worth it. Let that anime character arc really set in, Despite many warnings from people trying to help me, I put all my eggs in the same basket. Married young and devoted myself to someone thinking that devotion would always be reciprocated. But apparently people change even if you don't. Always be prepared for the other shoe to drop, I guess is my advice. Kinda cynical, I know, but recent experiences taught me a lesson I never wanted to learn. Went on a really great date recently. We really hit it off. We were at this bar until closing, just talking. He wanted to come back to mine, and I thought, hey, he seems really sweet, and we are having a lot of fun together. Why not? He stays up for hours talking and laughing, and we wind up doing it.
We continued talking even after that, and we were up until 6 a.m. The next day, I wrote, "Hey, had a great time. I'd be happy to see you again." And he said he also had a great time and how fun I was, but he didn't want to date because he didn't feel it. I was sad, but you can't help it. I asked if he wanted to be friends, and days go by. He ends up just reading the message, no response. I know it's a stereotype for men to do this kind of thing, but I actually have never experienced this before. I've only had guys be really upfront and honest, or I could tell they were just trying to get in my pants. So now I'm left embarrassed and feel slightly used, so I regret that.
Dating someone who always wanted things their way, my life scheduled around what they wanted to do, thinking they would change and it would balance out in time. They were selfish and self-centered. That was the core issue, not a scheduling one. I wish I would never have been exposed to this hookup culture, being made to believe that once I was of legal drinking age that I need to go and have one-night stands, etc. I'm so numb inside that I just continued to date and I don't know how to attach. I'm pretty convinced at this point I wouldn't know love if it slapped me in the face.
Well, that is, geez. That made me kind of sad.
I had not one, not two, but 3 girls I had huge crushes on out their feelings for me on the last day of high school before moving on to college elsewhere, essentially saying, "You should have asked me out." Never could pick up on signals. Ended up meeting my wife and mother of my 3 kids almost 15 years now on a dating app after college, so it all worked out for the better. That I should have jumped at the chance with my current girlfriend 6 years ago. We went to the movies as friends and I really liked her. She casually asked me if I actually wanted to date her. I said that she was a catch, but I was too old for her. I really didn't want to be the creepy older guy, so we are now together 6 years later because I at least had enough social skills not to mess up the friendship in the meantime. Dating someone I liked the idea of but not being into them. She was a professional, a grown adult who could communicate her desires. She was enthusiastic about her sex and very much enjoyed one another's company. We would have been fantastic friends with benefits. I just wasn't that into her and she was into me. I knew it, but rather than being fair to her and ending it on transitioning to a friends with benefits situation, I kept it going. Eventually, she dumped me because she was jealous of my female friends. Nothing was going on, but she recognized that they were harming her mental health and didn't want to put up with seeing photos of me hanging out with them. I don't regret anything because I believe you make the choices right for you at the time based on the information you are presented with. Dating her taught me that it's not fair to treat people like that, and I was voluntarily single for 5 years, rather than date people I was only casually interested in. I learned a lot from her, so no regrets, but I do wish I had ended it better. Being too afraid to look like a fool. Only dated superficially, so dated lots of women I didn't actually have things in common with. Invented a single me and a boyfriend me. Do not do this. Always ended up being a boy toy and not a boyfriend and not speaking up about it. My biggest dating regret is expecting the character of my dating options to be better than my own level of personal development. I guess this person means that they always expected the person they were dating to be more mature or just know better than them. I'm not quite sure what they mean. I feel like I've got an inkling of what they are talking about, but I'm not quite there. Chasing. As a woman, pursuing men always felt wrong, but sadly, I've always had to do it because I'm painfully average and invisible. I could stand in front of a beige wall and you'd only see a beige wall. It leads to nothing great anyway. I always end up with someone who's desperately in love with, you guessed it, a very beautiful woman I will never be like. I am someone you pick only if you've made peace with the fact that the one you want will never be yours, so you've decided to settle for less. Dating is absolutely crap for me. If I knew that I'd have to do all the chasing and all the work and all the pathetic attempts to be the best version of myself, which still isn't good enough, I'd have never dated a man. Being alone and asexual isn't all that bad. Okay, you I feel very bad for because it sounds like your confidence has been utterly crushed, and I don't believe anyone deserves to feel that way, especially about their physical appearance, which you just can't help. I had several relationships with very insecure and unstable people with a lot of mental illnesses, and I can say out of all of the crap that I lived through so far, these relationships were the absolute worst part of it. I was always just too open-minded and tolerant, especially knowing how hard life can be with aforementioned issues, and didn't want to close the door to the potential person of my life. But after my last disaster of a partner, I don't even have enough trust in other people left to consider a relationship with them. I slightly regret hamming it up so much in the video earlier on because, damn, this is getting kind of dire and sad. I tried dating 2 girls once. I couldn't handle splitting my emotions, so I dumped one and committed to the other. That girl dumped me, and the other girl wouldn't date me again. Comedy. Oh, also I remember bringing girls to my room when I was younger, them laying in my bed with me and me not doing anything because I was just a little too respectful. Didn't end up with the vast majority of them. One even bluntly commented on how I should have made moves. Cringe, man. I matched with this girl on Tinder a few years back. In our conversation, she told me she was on a temporary visit in the country and that she's staying at a hotel. We agreed we'd meet outside the hotel and go for a drink of coffee at a nearby Starbucks. When I reached the front of the hotel, she didn't exactly walk out of the hotel, but in fact, someone had dropped her at the hotel. That was the first red flag. As I greet her and introduce myself, I suggest we walk for a bit and make our way to Starbucks, but she was adamant of a nearby cafe that she's pointed out across the street, and I was like, okay, sure, why not? The rest of the day was comprised of just getting to know her and what she's doing here on a visit, and while this was happening, she proceeded to order wine numerous times and kept walking back and forth to the restroom. Second red flag. And by the end of our 2-hour-long date, the bill came, and I presume it was going to be at least a 100+ billing, but to my shock, it ended up costing me $560 plus, and I reluctantly paid for it as it is customary where I'm from that guys pay the bill if you're the one who invited the person to the date. And when the bill was paid, she wanted to go clubbing, and I told her, sure, let's meet tomorrow night and go, but I just ended up blocking her and deleting her contact info. I found out later that this is a common scam that happens in my country, and apparently the cafe and her are both in cahoots. She drags in the victims, and the cafe artificially inflates the prices of their menu to overcharge me. The worst part? This was the first date I ever went on, and it took a lot of courage for me to put myself out there, and after that date, it frickin' broke me, and I felt so violated that I haven't gone on a date since. Not dating in my 20s, for one. My early life was something of a sob story because of a butthole doctor in my teens. I had a serious, life-threatening illness when I was a teenager, but we caught it in time and treated it. But this doctor told my mom point-blank right in front of me, "You realize he's going to die from this, right? This kid won't live to see 30. This will probably come back and we won't be able to treat it." Mom fired him from my case after that and a few horrible missteps of bedside manner. I'm 44, by the way, and fine. It never came back, but it screwed me up for years. I lived my late teens and 20s like I was gonna die soon. I didn't invest anything in my life. I lived it up. I partied. I screwed around a lot. Why would I bother getting into a relationship if I was going to die? I mean, sure, I dated a couple times, but nothing more than a couple months, and the problem was, I got so used to being alone and self-sufficient that when I got into my 30s, I tried to date more, but lacked a lot of relationship skills and just really struggled being a part of a couple. Being a partner. Cheating. Don't do it, kids. It's not worth it. I've loved 4 women in my life and not a single one of them would look my way, and knowing it's my fault makes it 100 times worse. I'm sorry, Amanda. Not researching the guy first. There was a guy I went on a few dates with last year. Really liked him. He ended up dating someone else. A few nights ago, I decided to find out his last name because he never told me. When I found out his last name and looked him up online, I found articles about how he sexually assaulted a 7-year-old girl he was babysitting. The dude only served 4 months. I dodged an absolute missile. God damn it, where are the Gary Plochets of the world when you need them? I'm 22 and I have yet to date anyone, so I guess my biggest regret in dating would be not having dated anyone. I suffered something I've always called the weirdness, which is me bottling things up and ending up in major anxious episodes which have destroyed relationships and made some very difficult. It also created either an over-attachment or rejection of people. My style is anxious preoccupied attachment, and it's the first time in 46 years I've been able to give the weirdness a proper name. I regret not hooking up with women before meeting my boyfriend. I feel like he's the one, got me, so I will never know what it's like to sleep with a woman, and it does make me sad sometimes. I also feel like a threesome would ruin our relationship, so that's out of the question. You know, that's absolutely wonderful. I'm really happy that you think this guy is the one, and good luck running away from your gay thoughts. Taking back my ex after she cheated. Don't ever do that. It'll never be the same. So many, either not understanding that they're not interested or worse, not understanding that they are interested. I could have lost my virginity years before if my teenage brain wasn't immune to logic and not so subtle hints. On the other hand, I'm beginning to be a believer of the theory that somehow my life is how it should be. If I had gotten together with that sexy girl that threw herself at me when my friend wanted to leave, I probably would have been a father at 19, which never in my life looked or looks as a good idea. I have too many. One is simply that I took too long to start doing it and then wasn't very good at it and struggled with it for years. I didn't date in high school or even try, and then in college I found myself getting a little older and having none of the experience that most of my peers seem to have. I eventually ended up in a relationship with an older, 30-ish woman with kids. I want to be clear, I don't think that relationship was in any way exploitive, but it just wasn't right for me in the long run, and I never had the experience of having a normal college girlfriend. Maybe it was out of reach for me. I don't know. After that, there were a lot of dry spells. Not just sex-wise, in terms of dating. It eventually worked out and I'm married, but I just wish the road there was easier. I don't know why I needed to go through so many rough, lonely patches. There is a particular situation that haunts me though. I had a date that went well. We were both in our mid-20s. To set the stage here, a lunch/coffee date turned into, hey, let's walk around for a while, which turned into going to an art museum, which eventually turned into getting dinner because we'd spent a lot of the day together. We seemed to have a good vibe and I thought things were going really well. Unfortunately, because of what you can infer from my first paragraph about my own timidity with dating, I eventually sought out a lot of advice, mostly on the internet, that turned out to be not great. I had been used to asking girls if they wanted me to kiss them at the end of a date, but I'd gotten the feedback that a lot of women would find that to be too timid compared to just going for it, and therefore a turnoff, that it seemed too weak. So I finally reasoned, hey, this is going well, as we went to the train and departed. I leaned in and kissed her. After I pulled back, I realized she was mortified. We walked away, but since our respective trains were not showing up yet, I decided to walk back to her and ask if she was okay. She explained that while she was okay, she was incredibly embarrassed because she had never been kissed before. I felt horrible. The train station was hardly the best setting for someone's first kiss, but also I hadn't realized she was so nervous about it and may not have wanted to do it that quickly. We talked a bit afterwards, but our messaging eventually petered out. A lot of friends, including women, told me that while yes, I probably should have asked, I shouldn't feel too bad about it, and that it was probably just her embarrassment, that it may have even been a relief for her in the long run that she got it over with. But I still feel horrible and still wish sometimes I could find her again and apologize. Asking a 22-year-old who looked like Nicole Kidman if I could use her back door. The next day she slapped me and never spoke to me again. Oh my. Trying to be the cool GF. As a teenage girl in the dating world, people see setting boundaries as the crazy GF who doesn't let their partner do anything. So I wanted to refrain from that as far as possible because I was 15 going on 16 trying to impress this 18-year-old. Boy, was I wrong. We needed those boundaries. I let him walk all over me so much for the first 6 months of our relationship that setting up boundaries in later time was a lot harder and frustrating for both of us. I'm now 17 turning 18, and even though it's only been 2 years, I'm really happy with my progression and sense of awareness. So many signals I didn't respond to because I thought, what if I'm wrong? 1. Persevering too long with someone who wasn't good to me because even though he treated me terribly, we could have so much fun together. 2. Then having learned my lesson, persevering too long with someone who was good to me because even though we never had much fun together, he treated me well. Finally, I realized that I had overcorrected and I met my husband who both treats me well and who I can have fun with. Plenty of other guys in there too, but I don't regret any of them. I regret taking my early dating life so seriously. We all know we're not marrying our high school partners. I should have prioritized my enjoyment of fleeting opportunities when they presented themselves because 40-year-old me isn't getting the chance to make out with Amanda Davino under the bleachers at the Friday night football game ever again. My regrets were that I struggled with social anxiety and depression during my prime years, so I forfeited much of the fun, i.e. dating, sex, relationships, that I likely would have otherwise had if I were not so marginalized by those issues. My late teens and all through my 20s and 30s were a dull blur. Kids, it's important you don't waste your life. And I don't mean do dangerous, stupid things. You should still think about what you're doing, but for the love of God, don't waste your life.
People with religious extremist parents. What was it like growing up? Had an exorcism in the living room once, also didn't get all of my vaccines, and now I don't know what I'm at risk for since those tests to see what vaccines you've had are so expensive. Oh, making friends was awkward in grade school because I couldn't watch the shows and listen to the music they did. Some of my earliest memories are driving with my whole family in the Suburban and my dad telling us all the great Christian persecution was going to begin soon, and we all needed to be prepared for them to take us away from him and my mom and how terrible it would be. He got very into Y2K prepping as well, and I remember calling my friends and telling them to believe in Jesus because the world was going to end and we needed to all be ready. I also remembered being confused as to why I didn't have any good friends. Middle school was pretty rough for me. I moved 1,000 kilometers to get away from them. It was terrible. I remember getting into an argument when I was 15 with my parents about how crappy my life was. I had no time for friends because I'd wake up, go to school, come home, do dishes, then homework, then chop wood for 2 hours, clean the floors, maintain the fire in the wood stove, etc. It was like minus 30 degrees Celsius, and I'd have to basically take care of my parents, make them coffees and teas, make them food, keep the fire warm for them. It was the only means of heating that we had. Neither one worked. They just sat there for 16 hours a day on their computers, smoking 5 packs a day between them, staining the entire inside of the house yellowish brown. I used to get bullied in school for smelling like smoke. Anyways, they were bragging about their conservative parenting skills, being superior, etc. I just said something to my dad along the lines of, "Get off your high horse." One of the few times I ever talked back. He just shoved me as hard as he could and stormed out yelling and swearing. Used to get beat and yelled at all the time, so that was nothing, to be honest. It was awful. I burnt my hands and arms occasionally in the wood stove stoking the fire, and my mom used to say things like, "If you think that's painful, just imagine the torture that's ahead of you if you don't respect your parents." She literally said this to me too.
God will make it so that I'll forget that you ever existed when you go to hell and I go to heaven because God takes good care of mothers.
I am not exaggerating. This actually happened. Pretty sure I've said this before, at least in so many words, and I'll say it again. Fanaticism in anything is only going to lead you down a dark and horrible path that will surely lead to people absolutely hating you. And if they don't, it's probably because they're just as indoctrinated as you. I'd hear my mom constantly complaining about how I am not religious and a shame to the family. Occasionally, there was even a comment about how me not being religious is the reason of my parents' health being bad. When I was young, my mom was cautious with who I was friends with. People practicing other religions were a strict no-no. I have a friend since college, and my mom constantly worries that I'm going to convert. I was always under my parents' watch. They were helicopter parents, so that I couldn't do anything against our religion. I was always the weird kid because my clothing had to be appropriate, and anyone that wasn't our religion, I had to try to convince them to come to our church, or what was the point of being friends with them. Women weren't equal, and we were told that everything we were doing was practicing to be a good wife and mother someday, and that it was our true calling and nothing else mattered. If we planned to go to college, that was great because it could help us teach our children. Sundays were for church only, or church-related activities. No TV, no playing outside, etc. We were just normal enough that we thought we were normal until we grew up and realized that we didn't have any self-esteem or value in ourselves without the church giving us our worth and value. I'm still trying to detox and to find ways to raise my kids because I know I don't want to raise them like I was, but I also don't know the right way to raise them any other way, and I fall into the pattern of being like my parents. Not my parents so much as my grandparents, but my parents carried on the traditions for most of my life. No shows or movies with talking animals, encourages friendships with demons. Women wear ankle-length skirts and dresses, don't cut their hair, keep their hair in a tight, modest bun for church, or any time they wear it up. Purity promises and rings at the start of puberty. Women do not work outside of the home unless absolutely necessary. When my brother got outed as gay, my grandmother nearly tried to exorcise the devil out of him. Church was cult-like, youth groups was a brainwashing session. I've been made to read the Bible multiple times over as my homework instead of real schooling. I'm an atheist now, undoubtedly because of how religion was forced down my throat past my tears growing up. I've had to learn not to hate every religion or religious person I come across. My years at church broke my sense of self-worth and my moral compass until very recently. For me, it was only my mom who was religious, Jehovah's Witness. She converted a few years after my parents had me, so my dad had no idea how bad it was going to be. No holidays or friends for me growing up. I remember freshman year of high school. I wanted to hang out with some kids after school. My mom was not having it and drove around town to find me. It was humiliating, and she openly disapproved them because of how they dressed. She didn't want me hanging out with the wrong crowd because it would stray me further from God. After that, I just stopped bothering trying to make friends last outside of school. My childhood memories were mainly hearing my parents arguing and threatening divorce because my dad was unhappy and hated that our family couldn't do most things like birthdays, Christmas, Halloween, etc. I'm pretty sure their love life was depressing too because lovemaking was only to procreate and it had to be missionary. She openly hates homosexuals and is very judgmental. She has exploded on me and given me silent treatments due to my choice of hair color and fashion. My dad also lost a lot of friends just like me. I'm 26 now and they're still together, but I know they're struggling like they did when I was 5. When I was a kid, my best friend in the entire world actually was a Jehovah's Witness, and I didn't really understand it by any means, but they weren't that bad or anything. Like, you know, they were pretty normal. They just went to church and stuff and didn't do Christmas and stuff like that. I remember their family being a little dysfunctional, but so was mine, and that didn't really matter to me because, like I said, we were just best friends. Grew up hardcore Mormon. I'd like to stress that my childhood isn't as common for other Mormon kids. Most of the time, Mormons are fairly understanding and loving to their kids, but the Mormon culture does promote the mentality my parents had. When I was growing up, I wasn't punished like some others here. I was spanked and experienced the belt, but that isn't why I have some psychological problems now. The real punishment was shame. From the earliest age I can remember, around 6, I was told that I was lazy and wasting my life away. When I first heard the word SX around 11, I looked it up on the family computer. I was a pervert from then on, and had to talk to the bishop every month for a checkup. Hell, in every school I went to, my parents told school counselors that I wasn't allowed on computers because I might look up pictures of naked women. I never did this. This is just the SparkNotes version, but I internalized the shame. Being so young, I just accepted that I was what my father called me and hated myself for it. I was a lazy failure at 6. I was a pervert at 11. It didn't stop me from doing any of the things I was doing before. I just learned to fear my father's footsteps as if it was the devil himself walking down the hallway. I lived my life in the brief intervals between punishments. I am still not beyond this at 24 years old. I later found out that the reason my father lashed out at me and called me these names was because he was fighting his own battles on these issues. He watched smut and hated himself for it. He lost his job. Not his fault. 2008 was hard for everyone. 2020 is no better. And felt inadequate. He was directing his own self-hatred at me. Now, both of us hate ourselves, and digging our way out seems impossible. From my mother's side, things were smooth. However, my father was using religion to abuse me. As a Muslim, we used to memorize the Quran. For me, I wasn't good at memorizing, so I spent 12 years, 3 hours a day trying. After all, I stopped trying and he kept shaming me for not completing it. During the 12 years, he was always comparing me with other kids, friends and cousins, which made me hate them as well. He would also use religion to abuse my mother, face covers and gloves and other crap. Not only that, he listens to music whenever he wants, but when he sees us listening to it, he starts yelling and shaming us. Extremists consider music as taboo. Life was hard for me when I'm close to him, so I moved away. I wouldn't call them extremists, but Pokemon, Harry Potter, MTG, and a lot of other stuff was banned. Pokemon because it promoted evolution over creationism, other stuff because of magic and demonic imagery, the list goes on. I missed out on a lot of cool stuff growing up. Then both my uncles came out as gay, and the whole religious bullcrap stopped soon after. Parents and I get along fine now, but I'm still kind of salty about some stuff. They confiscated my entire secret stash of MTG cards when they found them. I'm super atheist now, by the way. How insecure do you have to be with your ideology and just way of life if you feel like, I don't know, Pikachu could flush years of indoctrination down the toilet because your child plays Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or some crap? It's just so stupid. Same for religions that ban music. It's just pathetic at a certain point. My parents are still Muslim and I am still not an adult, so I am still in the process of having to live with them. You would guess that my father would be a little more open to the world after seeing his half-brother being happily married to a man. No, exactly the opposite. You are not allowed to be like him. He is going to the bad place. He is tainting the family's reputation. That is point one, forcing their child to be someone that they simply aren't. They want to force me and my brother to go back to Turkey. I do not want that at all. I was born and raised and I have lived in Germany for my whole life. Turkey is also really anti-LGBTQ+, something that would really endanger me. Having parents that think that mental illness in general do not exist and are results of demons entering the body to torment your soul is not a great thing. I am pretty sure that I have anxiety, depression, and maybe something more that I am not comfortable with sharing, but guess what?
There is no such thing as anxiety or depression. You simply do not wish to follow my guidance.
And they send me to the mosque to learn and read our Quran and to chase the demons away. I need a therapist since I was maybe 6 years old, but nobody listens. I am feeling like they are trying to take my identity away. I am someone who isn't comfortable with their body at all. I don't mean weight, I mean the gender they assign me at birth. But I know that I will never get the chance to live as who I am. Even my friends do not accept my wishes and still use the wrong pronouns and name. Guess I'll never get the chance to choose who I want to be and who I want to love. Like seriously, they picked who they want to marry themselves, but when I asked if I can choose my husband, I get a no? I am someone who would gladly cut them out from my life, but sadly I know what would happen. They would try more things to get me to stay, or would never leave me alone. My family thought my dad was murdered in Ecuador on a mission trip and that it was my fault. He was on a mission trip and would call us daily from the phone in town about a mile walk from where he stayed. We didn't get a call for 2 days and then got a voicemail from a hospital in Ecuador that was in Spanish and had bad reception. Around this time, I snuck a copy of Diablo home from a friend's house to install on my computer against my mother's commands. She was very religious and warned me about the evils of bringing sinful things into our home. Always said that doing so would invite devils into our home and our lives. Long story short, I lived in complete agony and regret for a week thinking I murdered my father, just to get a call from him when he landed in Texas saying they lost power to phones in town and he wasn't able to call home. This is just one of the many times I was messed up over our religious upbringing. My parents were pretty cool when it came to religion and raising me and my sister growing up. They were both Christians and I was taught all the stories and such, but we weren't churchgoers. It was exposure to my aunt and uncle and their family that really gave me a taste of religious fundamentalism. I moved from a heavily Catholic, though my immediate family weren't Catholic, small Texas town to Middle Tennessee where I turned 10. Not only did I really get my first taste of religious fundamentalism moving into the Bible Belt, but particularly the hardcore Baptist sect of it, the largest being the aforementioned aunt and uncle. Our families got along, but they would always pressure us into going to church with them, make buttholish comments about our parents raising us for hell and that we turn out to be bums and women of the night. Over the course of 13 years of living in Tennessee, I moved back to Texas a decade ago. Our families had more than one falling out. I'm grateful that I didn't live directly under the thumb of it, but between them and the overabundance of fundamentalism in rural Tennessee really turned me off religion entirely, and is a large reason of why I am so proud to be an atheist today. So congratulations to said aunt and uncle, you failed spectacularly. I was raised Mormon and I happen to also be gay. My father is nothing short of devout, very, very religious. I ended up feeling alone most of my teenage years, and at the time thought I would disappoint my parents so strongly I thought I would never survive the stress. So there's a lot of pressure to feel the spirit even at a young age. But there's a lot more age-based ceremonies, so you get a lot of attention specifically on yourself at a young age. 8. Baptism. My parents also gave me Mumi, First Bible/Book of Mormon. 12. Become a deacon, passing sacrament. 14. Become a teacher, preparing sacrament. 16. Becoming a priest, blessing sacrament. 18. Gaining the priesthood, the right to most of the authority and capabilities in the church. 19. Going on a mission. Anyway, I never felt anything, and once I started having gay urges, I freaked and repressed those emotions deep down. By the time I was 16, my faith was faltering, as so many of the teachings made no sense to me. I stopped going to the church, never got the priesthood, never went on mission, and my parents kept saying, it's just a phase. At 25, after another failed female relationship, she was incredible, I just had zero attraction to her. I finally came to terms with being gay. I had no idea how I would ever find the courage to tell them. I was so afraid they would shut me out and I would lose them forever, especially my dad. Despite his strong religious background, he was always a very loving father. I love his company. When I was 27, I told told my parents I actually had a boyfriend for a year and it was going well. My mom basically started becoming hysterical. My father, stone silent. My mom spouting facts about HIV. My dad's look of confusion and controlled poise was unnerving. It was a bumpy next couple of years for both of them, but my mom came around sooner. My dad took forever. I reminded myself it took me 13 years since puberty to accept this. I can give them time too. He started coming around since I got in a new relationship with my partner. My current partner of 4 years is incredible. He melts the stone hearts of both my parents. He's kind, anticipates the needs of everyone around him, and a joy to be around. My parents see how happy he makes me. My mom asked me recently, when are we getting married? My father hugs my partner with genuine love and appreciation. Being raised religious was very stressful. I felt alone for a long period in my life. Now I am living what I thought was not achievable. I opened up to my parents. They accept me for who I am. I accept them, and we're all happier than I ever could have hoped for. Sometimes you really need a story like this one just to lighten the mood a little bit, because I'm actually really happy for this dude. Was deathly terrified of who I was. I'm bi. My dad literally told me he would disown us if he found out we were gay. The funny thing is, we ended up disowning him. He was doing illegal substances behind our backs, and now he can't see his grandkids. Grew up with heavily religious parents, but my mom was way more immersed within it than the rest of my family. Christian. She wasn't as strict with me compared to my other siblings, but she basically forced the idea of church on all of us, and kinda drilled into our head that participating in worldly events will send you to hell. Sex before marriage? Hell. LGBTQ plus friends? Hell. Self-deletion? Hell. You get the gist of it. I felt guilty for feeling and thinking a lot of things I considered to be bad and would try to make up for it by praying. She was also the primary source for my horrid self-image issues. I was pretty overweight as a kid, and my mom has always been overweight, so hearing things like, you don't need to be eating that extra cookie, or you're way too big, or I definitely need to get you a trainer so you can be skinny like your friends, definitely crushed me on the inside. I did end up losing a lot of weight and evened out, so she never really comments on my body anymore. The whole deliverance plus tongues thing was scary to me as a child, and I never fully understood it. I tried so hard to feel the presence of God within me, but I never understood what everyone else was talking about. I never talked to God, and eventually I started questioning things when I was around 12 to 13. Anyways, fast forward to when I was around 15, I had realized how crappy organized religion was, and how inauthentic and hypocritical everyone is. I told my mom that I don't believe in God, and she pulled the, but God provided everything for you, the house we live in, the cars we drive, etc., etc. Like, no. I'm pretty sure you working your butt off day in and day out did that. A lot of times she also likes to go on the whole, if you don't follow in God's path, you'll just be a vehement sinner who will go to hell spiel. It's tiring and repetitive. She's still a Jesus freak, and I still don't agree with the church whatsoever, but most of the time I just go so she won't moan at me or threaten to take my car keys away, or some absurd thing like that. Nowadays, though, I have no interest in being part of the church or religion whatsoever, but every Sunday morning we go, I always have a toke session beforehand, LOL. I remember crying myself to sleep some nights because my friends celebrated Christmas, so I thought that meant they couldn't get into heaven. That is like really, really sad. Like the thought of every year that comes around, everyone's like excited for Christmas, and then this one kid is just like so upset that his friends aren't going to go to heaven with him. That's really sad. I lack sentiment in any form, and I'm almost entirely incapable of love. If somebody hurts me, I automatically sever our relationship in my head, and it's like I never knew them. I grew up incredibly vulnerable to conspiracy theories because facts didn't matter. I grew up with no sense of empathy because the church told me what and how to feel about all things. I grew up with no self-confidence because I was expected to be perfect and could not be. I grew up with extreme self-loathing because if I wasn't happy, it's because I wasn't close enough to God. Depression was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. Illness was my own fault because I wasn't close enough to God. If I have financial pain, it's because I'm not close enough to God. Now that I'm almost 30, I've left that cesspool of lies and I'm learning how to be a human who feels empathy, sees facts, and is capable of love. It's frickin' hard. I'm gonna try and find one that isn't so sad.
1. Very religious parents. We have to abstain from eating onions, meat, and garlic for 9 days twice a year. 2. My parents always think that their religion is the best. They sometimes criticize other religions. 3. They think homosexuality is a sin. 4. My mother wants me to stop eating non-vegetarian food after I get married. 5. I'm only allowed to eat non-vegetarian on Sunday, Friday, and Saturday. 6. My mother frowns when I tell her that I don't believe in God. Yes, I'm Hindu. Yes, it doesn't sound so extreme, but I want to be a chef, so it does sound extreme from my point of view. No, I'm not going to get the hell out of this place because I still love my parents. My mother and father work very hard to ensure I get a proper education and food. Okay, maybe a little oppressive in some regards, but not that bad, not that bad. I honestly think that's the best tone we're gonna end on. What's one thing from the 1990s that will never be popular again? Being in front of the TV with friends and family at a certain time to watch a certain show, and if you missed it, you missed it. Free AOL Frisbees in the mail. Here's $20. I'll pick you up at 8 when the mall closes. Don't talk to strangers. Payphones. Really hoping parachute pants come back. Personally, I've got a soft spot for Jinko jeans. Pogs, even if Alf comes back for it.
Hey, Bart, you know Alf? He's back in Pog form.
The golden age of shareware, the idea of actually owning the software you buy and decent file sharing through Napster before companies inundated LimeWire and the like with virus-infected decoy seeds. Get off the internet! I need to use the phone! Yo, MTV Raps!
Palm Pilots.
What the figgity-uck is a Palm Pilot? Oh, a PDA. I'd see them around a lot, and I remember wanting one real badly, but I wouldn't know what it was for, and why the hell would I even have one, because I was a feral ADHD goblin child. Phone booths. Rewatching The Matrix is a constant reminder of this. The film still holds up incredibly well, but the technology doesn't so much unless you can suspend your belief for the time period. See, when I was a kid, I thought The Matrix was cool. I especially thought that Matrix 2 Reloaded was cool, but now I'm older, I don't really like the films anymore. Purchased cell phone ringtones. You have received a collect call from, "Hey mom, I'm fine and going to a friend's house." Burning CDs for every occasion and writing said occasion on CD with Sharpie. Honestly, I think that's a nice, charming way of just cataloging memories and important moments in your life that are connected to a song. Y2K hype. There were a ton of futuristic shows and movies about the net. Let's just say it turned out differently and less cool than portrayed. Not really a 90s show or anything, or even franchise, but Mega Man Battle Network I always thought had like a pretty cool impression of the internet. Like with the net navies and everything. Tamagotchi. Hope for the future. I don't see Discmans making a comeback or those white seashell and coral necklace things everyone had, boys and girls both. Surprisingly, rollerblading seems to be making a bit of a comeback though. I see them at skate parks now quite often. They actually rip too, grinding flat bars and stuff. Remember free refills at coffee shops and ashtrays on every table? Affordable housing. Hope, progress, an idea of a better and happy future for all mankind. Jinko jeans. Not having a cell phone or anyone expecting you to have a phone on you at all times. VHS tapes and DVDs. Oh, we'll see who has the last laugh when the world goes to pot, the internet goes down, rendering the streaming services useless, and then I'm there with my Malcolm in the Middle all seasons DVD box set, my bicycle hooked up to a generator so I can power my TV and DVD player. We'll see who has the last laugh. But for real, DVDs are super cool. Physical media is king, and sometimes they come with really cool bonuses like behind-the-scenes information and whatnot, which can be really fun to look into. First-run syndication TV shows. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, there were really only 3 major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, with PBS and Fox having just launched. But Fox was still a very new thing that struggled to fill airtime. There were a lot of independent TV stations, though, that aired mostly reruns, old movies, game shows, etc. Then, Star Trek The Next Generation premiered in '87 as a first-run syndication show, meaning it aired on whatever local network wanted to pay for the rights on any day at any time. It was a huge success, and suddenly there was a ton of action-adventure shows going to first-run syndication. Those local stations that had nothing to show on certain nights loved it. Baywatch was directly syndicated and was one of the most watched TV shows in the world for one point. Then there was Xena, Hercules, ST, DS9, Babylon 5, Relic Hunter, Viper, and just a ton of other light-hearted action-adventure TV that doesn't really exist anymore. As a 90s kid, it was great. When UPN and the WB formed, a lot of those independent stations didn't need to fill airtime anymore. By 2000, the market had shrunk, and today with streaming, it's gone for good. Those t-shirts that reacted to heat and changed color? It turns out that bright purple armpits never became acceptable. I think the brand was Global Hypercolor. One of those inventions. Just because you can make it doesn't mean you should. I don't know, those shirts sound kinda cool actually, just on the concept alone. The creation of a major television network, or the attempt to do so. After Fox succeeded in the mid-80s to create the Big Four, and remember that PBS counts as a major as well, you saw attempts like the WB, UPN, and their merger in the CW. With streaming services, weblets, and specialized networks that only deal with a single topic, like the Weather Channel and ESPN, proliferating the airwaves, there's never going to be an appetite for another major network, or the rationale present to develop the funding necessary to create and sustain it until it becomes self-supporting. Not in the reality we're all currently living in. To do so, you have to have several things: a national news division, a dedicated sports division, a production division capable of turning out massive amounts of sustainable content, and it has to be scripted as well as non-scripted content, or reality television as it's called. A schedule that covers the entire week for at least 8 to 12 hours of original content daily, and a national network of television affiliates that broadcast your content. And in the cases of your news division, represent your main network in that affiliate's broadcast area. I remember how difficult it was for Fox back in the 80s, but as a fellow student in radio and television pointed out to me, they have a national news division, a weekly schedule, content, and local affiliates nationwide. Don't let anyone fool you, they are a network. And it's never going to happen again. Okay, being a media student, I find this stuff really interesting. I was not expecting a double feature on things like, about syndication and how Fox established itself as a giant network or whatever, but I don't think I completely agree with the idea that there'll never be a new TV network or something like that, because streaming platforms, from what I can tell, while they are somewhat profitable, they just don't seem like they're as profitable anymore as people like to think, and they're very restrictive business-wise, because the instant that you try to change anything, people are really finicky with it. It's like, oh, I thought I was going to get everything all at once in a week, and now more and more shows are going back to releasing an episode a week or something. Or the fact that all of them are now trying to make more money off of people by restricting how many people can really have an account at once, I wouldn't be surprised if regular old TV made a comeback eventually.
Limp Bizkit. They're one of the few bands unable to capitalize on nostalgic fans and have to cancel their last 2 tours for safety concerns and personal health reasons, which methinks is face-saving code for poor ticket sales.
I actually rather like Limp Bizkit, and after they've said that, I might see if they're touring through England.
Running home from the playground to watch and record your favorite cartoons on the VHS, spending hours at the video store, or reserving your favorite movies in advance. I still remember the 2+1 deal and how happy I was when I got an extra movie.
Colored ketchup.
Did anyone say Carrot Top yet?
Pontiac Sunfire.
PlayStation 1. While the PlayStation 1 itself is definitely not going to be making a comeback anytime soon, I do believe that the appeal of low poly graphics, like based on PlayStation 1 graphics, are slowly and gradually becoming more and more popular among people as an aesthetic choice. Smoking in restaurants. Shoulder pads. I could have swore shoulder pads were like a 70s thing. Pet rocks, like the ones that were actually sold. Cereal box prizes that are actually in the box and don't require a sign-up or something. I once got Lion King themed limited edition Pogs from a cereal box, had to save 3 barcodes and mail them in. They were awesome. Otherwise, there was always a gift or toy in the box. I miss those days. Companies don't use promotions like this anymore because they know we'll have to eat anyway. No need to market food anymore or make it appealing or exciting. So sad. Sony Walkman and Discman. Peanut butter and jam in the same jar.
For good reason, that sounds awful. Then again, apparently English peanut butter and American peanut butter are 2 completely different beasts.
I don't think movies like the original Blair Witch Project 1999 would have the hype it did. The internet changed a lot of things. That website with its lore, hidden secrets, and that most folks then couldn't go Google to see it was obviously fake. The number of people that believed it was real was insane. That would never happen today. Cheat codes and hidden characters are mostly gone now because of the internet. The secrets to unlock hidden characters in Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 were all word of mouth. When playing Tears of the Kingdom, I can literally find out every secret item on launch day. Very different
different from the original Legend of Zelda, where you had a map of the overworld that came with the game and were told, good luck. And yeah, it is too easy to complete games nowadays with the internet. Even I'm guilty of using the internet when I get really, really stuck in a game somewhere, though. What I really hate, though, is when games nowadays glitch out so badly that they just stop you from progressing, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? And then you get told, oh, you've just glitched. Other people have had the same problem. Oh, that's a good one, actually. Games being made and shipped as complete products worthy of the price you're paying day one. Having a face and body that hasn't been altered in some way or filtered and edited in photos. I remember when the furthest we would go to deceive people about our appearance was wearing a push-up bra. Yeah, filters are just super lame nowadays, and plus, let's be honest, I think people have trained their eyes now to be able to tell when a filter is being used. Smoking the devil's lettuce from an aluminium can. Furbies. Mofos being sensitive about everything. Play-Doh, Slinkies, boy bands, video rental stores, Will and Jada Smith. Laserdisc, Trapper Keepers, Paul Frank brand. I feel like there only used to be 15 famous people. Nowadays there are 100,000 famous people that you've never heard of. Polaroid nudes from your significant other. Teachers telling students that they can't speak a language other than English in class because I know you're talking about me. Prank calls before caller ID. Talking to your beloved on a landline with your family listening in because the only phone in the house is in your living room and your granny is making pumping motions with her hips whilst the rest of your family is giggling in the background. Screw that. Nah, mate, you just can't take the banter. Not sure if it was popular exactly due to limited release, but OK Cola. It was okay. My college roommate and I used to call the 1800 number repeatedly to hear OK jokes or get free coupons. We loved it. Probably everything I just said will never return. Human decency. There are far too many people going for imaginary internet points these days. Luckily, Eurodance boy bands phenomena like Take That and Backstreet Boys, Unlucky, Grunge, and Nirvana, Movie Phone, Aquanet, payphones, and phone books. When you think about the level of convenience that we have compared to, say, the 80s or even the 90s or 2000s even, it is crazy. Checking the free TV guide from the Sunday paper to find out which of the Cinemax or Showtime was going to have a softcore smut that shows breasts after your parents went to bed. Wait, maybe that was the late 80s.
Blockbuster, Purple Tomato Sauce, Saturday Disney Cartoons, Moon Boots, Pogs, Orbit Soda, Dial-Up Internet, Portable CD Players, WCW, Tamagotchis, and Fanny Packs.
In England, we call them bum bags because 1, fanny pack sounds stupid, and 2, well, it's kind of a gendered word here in England. Lunch tickets. Back then, we will get a yellow and black ticket calendar to get our food, and we had to give them to a ticketer. Green, yellow, and red cards for behavior. This was elementary. If your card was green, you'll get a surprise or some sort of pizza party. If your card was red, you'll get no pizza party, nor prize, and you'll do standards. Yellow was like a warning to get your act together. Spinner rims, like what were people thinking? Real comedy. I feel like you can't push boundaries anymore. Drawing animation. Long, dumb arguments about some trivia where there was no clear answer, so everyone left still believing they were right. When I was in middle school, you couldn't just pull out your smartphone to Google if Marilyn Manson actually removed a set of ribs so he could suck his own mini Manson. Hit shows with 1990s TV production value. There was such a vast difference between TV and movies. Shows like X-Files and NYPD Blue were very much exceptions in terms of production value. Most stuff looked cheap and shoddy. I mean, me personally, I would rather pick classic Magnum P.I. over, say, the more recent CWDC shows, because, God, those look awful now. I remember when my friends were raving about how good Arrow or maybe even The Flash were back in the 20-teens or whatever. But now, God, they have fallen. Those big wooden roundabouts with no seats or handles. Kids actually being kids. I loved running around the small green with my school pals. The whole be back when the streetlights come on as a way of knowing what time we had to be home. The fact that social skills were an actual thing. The lack of mind-numbing tech. And Snake. If you're wondering and don't know what he means by Snake, it's basically an old game. I used to be with it. Then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what is it seems weird and scary to me. It'll happen to you. Very, very underrated Simpsons quote in my opinion. Lead paint poisoning. I remember always seeing lawyer commercials about getting compensation. Not pleasant, but popular. Absolute golden age of Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. So many classic cartoons were created at that time. Unfortunately, my eyeballs would not wipe their butts with Cartoon Network at this point. I'm not sure if they mean like Cartoon Network or Adult Swim being at their best anymore, because like, I don't know, the characters and cartoons of the 90s are still revered to this day. I mean, there was that cartoon recently called Jellystone, I think, which is literally just all of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, save for Scooby-Doo, I think. Living in a town, and I think they gender swapped a bunch of the characters because otherwise it would just be a huge sausage fest. Out of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, I rather like Top Cat and Snagglepuss. Don't know why they're both cats, but I always liked it when Snagglepuss went, "Heavens to Murgatroyd!" Anyone remember the Hanna-Barbera Cartoon Olympics? Having an attention span, like even just watching TV without constantly checking the phone to look up something.
Well, you see, buddy, you're talking to the wrong guy here, 'cause I was born with ADHD. I've never had an attention span.
Shell suits, hopefully. Jimmy Savile. For those of you who don't know who Jimmy Savile is, you're probably American or something like that. Basically, he was a BBC presenter who got caught being a kiddie diddler. I say caught, but it was more that everyone knew he was a kiddie diddler, but he had so much influence and power, essentially, as a celebrity, like one of the biggest celebrities in the UK for a time, I think, that basically no one could do anything about it until he died, and then basically everything spilled out about how the BBC colluded with him and stuff like that. It was a whole frickin' thing when it happened. That one phone line that you would call and they would tell you the time. TV shows only having 3 commercials for a break. Then it went to 6. Going to clubs and raves with huge sound systems until 6 a.m., the UK government put laws in place to stop people openly partying all night long. From what I can tell from watching old shows, basically calling people gay as though it's top banter. I would say jelly shoes because of how goddamn uncomfortable they were, but they're back. Pages and everyone having a code so you knew who was paging you.
Wearing clothes backwards, it was a whole vibe.
I just don't believe you. I don't believe that wearing your clothes backwards was ever a vibe. Flip phones? Well, you say that, and yet the Samsung flip phone came out a couple years ago, and I absolutely love mine. Like, when I finally moved on from my 90s Nokia flip phone to whatever the hell I got in 2013 as my first actual my new phone or whatever, I was just there like, man, I wish this was a flip phone. And then finally in 2022 or 2021, Samsung answered my prayers and I frickin' love it.
Having a low spending market, everything seems to be increasing by the day.
Vanilla Ice. Hip hugger pants with a thong peeking out. Very common in the mid to late 90s. Visiting people in person randomly. Like, people would just drop by or we'd be out and stop by to see a friend. We were more hospitable, had more free time, and there was no cell phone, so it wasn't like you could call, so expectations were different. You know, when I first read that, I thought it said randomly visiting people in prison. I was like, what? Having to wait till 9 to call your girlfriend so you could get free minutes? Apparently, gaming in person with 2 players. I'm told you need separate consoles now. That actually annoys me nowadays with all of like the development that we've made in gaming and technology in gaming and whatnot. Multiplayer is kind of stagnant, especially local co-op and everything. Like, as someone who is a younger brother and whose brother didn't want to play games with him, or like, you know, he played single player games all the time, I wanted more games where I could actually like play through the entire game with my brother or my friends or whatever. It's just something that I think more games need to concentrate on. Flesh out multiplayer mechanics, for God's sake. Afraid of the Dark on Nickelodeon.
It is impossible to explain to someone who wasn't there
how cool the Macarena was the first week.
The Jerry Springer Show.
Gas was 89 cents a gallon and cigarettes were $9.99 a carton. Inflation's a female dog, honey. Internet cafes with full tables of boxy desktop computers, and you had to like pay by the hour to use it sometimes. I used to love this skeezy internet cafe that I used to go to with my friends. We'd play Call of Duty, S4 League, Dawn of War, or like mods of Warcraft with One Piece and Bleach characters. And they'd host all-nighters once a week on a Friday, and you'd be there till like 6 a.m. playing whatever the hell you want, and they'd give us the keys, and people would make like snack runs and everything. Man, those were good times. Animorphs books and the short-lived TV show. I think someone's making like a comic that's still going now, actually, of Animorphs. Hamster dance. Really elaborate home theater setups, component stereo systems. In mainstream use, I know there are still niche enthusiasts. Our first house was pre-wired in the family room for surround sound speakers. I would actually love a home theater system. Doing research using encyclopedias and dictionaries. Excessively violent, borderline hentai anime. Oh yeah, they don't make them like they used to. I remember watching the frickin' Guyver on a VHS when I was a kid with my mom and stuff. That was crazy. It was literally the show that told me or showed me that heroes don't always win. Or something like Ninja Scroll, which, God, do not watch Ninja Scroll if you have a weak constitution and are afraid of, well, some pretty violent and horrible sexual stuff going on, because I remember when I was 13 years old, my mom's friend was like, oh, he likes anime? I got him an anime DVD. Didn't even bother to look at the fact that it was an 18 plus. Also, please, believe me, I know some of you hate when I do too much commentary on these, but if I weren't doing this, I would literally be saying POG about 1,000 more times.
Late-night TV psychics, Miss Cleo, Sylvia Brown, John Edward, etc. Some of them couldn't even predict their own demise.
Apparently Surge, the gateway soda to a booger sugar habit. Life. Back in the 90s, life was so much better for a lot of reasons. We were much happier than today and we didn't have technology. We had more privacy than today before social media came by. Things were cheaper than today. My parents used to buy the newspaper for 15 cents back then. Today, it's €1.50 for the daily one. As a kid, I was much happier meeting other kids at school and we used to play a lot. Something like a shoebox was like winning the lottery. School used to be more exciting than today. I loved coloring books as a child. There weren't any automated phone systems back then, and you used to get on the phone with a company with ease. Everyone used to go outside for services, and we used to meet a lot of people, have a chat, and I used to play with anything. Riding the bus used to cost 15 cents. Today it's €2 before the government made them free. McDonald's used to be like a Disneyland to me. The toys used to be like winning the lottery. Street food like pasties used to cost 8 cents, and I used to eat 2 of them, and they were pretty good. Today you need to spend 60 cents for 1 pasty. TV shows were better than today's. I really loved Power Rangers and Baywatch, and I still love them till this day. MTV used to be about music and not reality shows. It used to be exciting. You didn't need to pay to watch TV back then, and it used to be good. Today, to watch TV, you have to pay only to see garbage being aired on the television. I do think that ever since modern technology emerged and life became faster, it's no longer the life I once knew. Everything is becoming boring nowadays. Inflation is a real female dog. Life was so much better back then. I still miss the 90s. Like, no duh, inflation sucks, and yeah, of course, everyone's gonna miss the times when they were younger and everything, and happier and whatnot because they were a kid. It's nostalgia and whatnot. I think the most probably profound thing that they said was about how the rapid expansion of technology, fast living, and things like people being made redundant from simple jobs like phone lines and everything. I hate it when they put me through to a robot when I want to talk to a person who could fix my very, very specific problem that the robot or whatever, or the automated phone system just doesn't give me the option to do. But I guess I'll stop there because the deeper I get into that topic, the more depressed I'll become. Good night, all! Teachers, what is the trashiest thing you've seen a parent do? I work at a school where over 80% of our population lives under the poverty line. I keep a cabinet full of hygiene products for kids to take. Deodorant, lotion, chapstick, hair gel, feminine hygiene products, shampoo, conditioner, those kinds of things in travel sizes. Being a teen is hard enough without having to cope with hygiene problems due to a lack of funds at home. So, one day, the entire thing is empty. Odd. I refill the cabinet and 2 days later, all of it is gone again. Refill with the last of my supplies and catch the kid in the act of sweeping everything in his bag. I stop him, take him in the other room, and talk to him. He told his mother about the cabinet. She ordered him to bring her everything he could get. She was returning the items to Walmart for store credit to buy cigarettes and beer. I told him to tell her the cabinet is locked now. I bought a bike lock. It was sickening. A mother came to a school sports day swigging from a bottle of wine. We always felt desperately sorry for her daughter, because whenever she returned to school following a holiday at home, this was a boarding school, we had to wash all of her clothes because they reeked of cigarettes, and this poor little girl was easily the most unhappy child I've ever seen. Woman I used to babysit for worked at a school as an assistant or some crap in Toronto. She always told this story about how the class rabbit would go home with a new kid each weekend. They kept trying to avoid giving one kid the bunny for the weekend because it was clear his home life wasn't the best, but they finally caved in and let him take the rabbit home.
The parents killed the rabbit and ate it. They killed the class bunny and fried it up for dinner. They weren't even ashamed when they told the teacher what happened on Monday. Said they were out of groceries or something. A likely story, but what if the boy simply wanted to keep the rabbit for himself forever? You deprived him of taking the rabbit home for so long, and when he finally had the chance to have the rabbit all to himself, he decided, well, what's stopping me from keeping it? Just make up a likely lie and it'll be all his. But if they did actually eat the rabbit, that is totally messed up. Well, in my profession, it's more often what the parents don't do that wins them the Parent of the Year award, but I do have a couple Hall of Famers. I'm a special education teacher, so I deal with kids with all kinds of physical, emotional, and academic disabilities. I took care of a little girl once who had a number of complications due to spina bifida. Her mother couldn't be bothered to take care of her. The little girl wore diapers and was cathed. She required 3 to 5 diaper changes a day. Mom would only send 5 diapers a week. The thing is, she was getting full services from her community, so she was being provided with plenty of supplies. We suspect Mom was probably selling the extras. I ended up just buying her diapers. Mom would not change her catheter regularly. We would change her out at school, but other than that, she'd go another 24 hours before a change out, longer if it was a weekend. The smell from the infections she'd get after a weekend was horrendous. She had lice constantly and oozing bedbugs sores. Her mom told us to F off when we call her and tell her to take her to a doctor. Found out later in the year that she also had scabies. We offered to administer the medication and creams at school. Mom told us to go to hell. The girl would come to school in men's underwear, XXL shirts, and size 16 pants. She was 8. Finally discovered that her 9-year-old sister was changing her diapers and dressing her every day, and sister couldn't find any other cleanish clothes to put on her. Mom's response? I'm busy. I have to get to work in the mornings. Final straw was when the nurse discovered what appeared to be STD warts while changing her diaper one day. Nurse made, for the 10th time, another CPS report, but principal insisted that we call home and report our findings. Grandma found out, tipped off Mom, and Mom appeared at the school 15 minutes later, snatched up the kids, and disappeared. Investigators showed up 15 minutes later, but Mom was already long gone. Never saw the kids again. I was wondering to myself the entire time, where the hell are Child Protective Services and why is everyone in this story so freaking useless? I wouldn't really give a crap. That kid wouldn't go anywhere with that woman if it were on my watch. Staff raised money to get an 8-year-old girl a winter coat. We live in rural Canada. Girl came to school the next day in a t-shirt in the dead of winter, her mom wearing the brand new child-sized jacket. For those wondering, the principal confronted her about it, and Mom told her to F off, and anything her kids owned belonged to her and she could do whatever she wanted with it. Children's Aid was called and that student lives with a very nice foster family now. Mother was rail thin, looked like a stereotypical junkie archetype, sleeves were 3 inches too short, didn't cover most of her stomach, and she could do it up properly. Our vice principal is a former army sergeant who's built like a tank. He's well-liked and an amazing role model in a community where many of our kids don't have good male role models. On several occasions, I've seen mothers step well over the line and make very asexual comments to him directly in front of their kids. I mean in plain sight of their own children, and in ways the kids notice. He's always very respectful and often asks another member of staff to join him if he sees one of those parents coming to talk. But it's pretty damn trashy when it comes to some of the innuendos I've heard. These aren't jokes either, they tried to get handsy with him too. My cousin is a teacher and she once had a parent come to a parent-teacher conference extremely drunk and right before the meeting tried to pull out a bag of booger sugar and start doing lines. Police were called and so was CPS. The school also had to call 911 once because a parent overdosed in the parking lot while waiting to pick up their kid, and the poor kid was too young to understand why their mom was slumped over in their car. It's quite sad, but I actually also know a teacher or two who's had to look after kids whose parents, don't really look after them and they're kind of addicted to illegal substances, and it's just really sad knowing that stuff goes on and people are so irresponsible with their own lives when they have kids to look after. The sad fact of the matter is some people do not deserve to have children. I volunteered after-school programs to help tutor. I had a student earlier this year. Good kid, loves math, loves computers, wants to be a programmer when he grows up. He's really struggling in 7th grade because he has no computer at home. We have to do his online assignments at the program, but we only meet twice a week. I pulled his mom aside and explained how he could be doing much better in school with some kind of PC and internet access at home. She says that she can't afford a computer. I tell her that for $200 I could piece all the parts together myself
myself for a fully functional setup that would be sufficient for at least the next few years. I'd even build it with him so he could learn some extremely valuable information. I'd even front her half, but she'd have to pay me back. She says no way, still way out of her budget. Mind you, while we're having this conversation, she's barely looking up to speak to me, too busy scrolling through the gram on her phone. I say, screw it, I'll do it myself. Scrap together all the parts I can for free. I only had to buy an HDD. The setup was really out of date, but still worked. Gave it to them, kid was thrilled. About a month later, I noticed he's trying to finish all of his homework at the program again. I ask his mom if everything was okay with the computer. She says it broke down. I say, okay, what happened? I'll pick it up and try to fix it. She says she had to throw it away. I pull the kid aside and ask him. He tells me she sold it to her cousin for $50. I really don't like calling people trashy when they're apparently stuck in a culture of poverty. Maybe she needed that $50 for the light bill or groceries. But at the same time, she spends 3 times that amount on her cell phone each month. So it really just broke my heart. It was like she's doing everything in her power to ensure the kid has no frickin' chance at a decent life. I work in a school in one of the most socially deprived areas of the UK. At Parents' Evening, we give every parent a printout of their child's grades in each subject alongside their target grades. Last year, we had a parent of an 11-year-old respond to this printout by shouting, "What the F am I going to do with this? I can't effing read, can I?" This was in front of the other children, parents, and her child's teacher. After only 1 year in this school, there's actually a pretty long list of things I've seen parents do, or have heard other staff members claim to have seen parents do. Since a few people have asked, the school is in the Midlands. I don't want to be any more specific, just in case anyone figures out which school it is. People seem to be torn on seeing this as just trashy or more as sad, as if I might be picking on her a bit. Just to be clear, I'm not making fun of her. A quick laugh behind closed doors at things like this seems to give a bit of levity for a teacher in schools like mine. It can be tough, but I think the majority of people who work in these areas do it because they want to help conquer some of the social inequalities or issues that people are facing, whether that's for pure humanistic beliefs, their own ego, or just because it feels like you're accomplishing something. Maybe a bit of each. Regardless, I feel sympathy for the woman in question and her daughter. One of the aims of my job is to help prevent people reaching adulthood without the necessary skills to thrive. Her behavior doesn't change that. That doesn't make me assume I'm a higher class of person than she is, just dealt a different hand, I guess. At the mention of the Midlands, I just had to read it, and now I have to think about what school it could possibly be. Also, what a stupid thing to get angry about. No one can tell if you can read or not. Like, that's up to you to tell people. I called a parent about a behavioral issue. I must have been on speakerphone because I heard the kid come home. Parents start screaming at him, wailing on the kid, cussing, calling them all sorts of names. I don't even know if the parents remembered I was on the phone. I hung up the phone and went to my principal. Teachers are mandated reporters. Don't hit your kids in front of a teacher. That should remind me, I had a really great school when I was a kid. The headmaster actually drove me to school on some days and even organized other teachers to drive me to and from school occasionally at the height of personal family issues as a kid. Teachers can seriously have the most positive effect on kids with bad home lives. Oh my god, I've worked in behavior units and juvies for a few years now, so you can imagine the families we get. 1. Took the kid out on the last day of term, pull into the driveway, and one of the kid's mothers is standing there, can of Monster in one hand, cigarette in the other, and wearing a miniskirt and knee-high boots in the middle of winter. 2. One grandparent used to come in wearing a dirty singlet with his belly hanging out and would try to kiss me and called me love, darling, and babe. 3. A kid left grounds without permission, so didn't have his phone, etc., which we confiscate. Mom came to pick it up, and when the principal tried to engage her in a conversation about her son's behavior, she attacked him with her handbag. I have 2. There is a parent who would walk through our closed campus every single day. As teachers, we are supposed to stop her because it's closed campus. Every single day, she would pretend she didn't know the rules. We always knew it was the same parent because she let her younger children, who weren't in school yet, ride around on their scooters ahead of her. One day, she was walking through with a stroller. She was not paying attention, and her freaking baby started falling out from the front of the stroller. I saw 4 teachers jump up to help the kid, and the mom didn't even acknowledge. The other one happened directly to me during parent-teacher conferences. I was meeting with a mom and her live-in boyfriend about her son. At the end of the conference, I asked if they had any questions I could answer for them, and he started asking me personal questions and flirting with me. I deflected and told them I had more conferences, but other teachers have told me that parents have hit on them before, so it's probably pretty common. Not a teacher, but a college administrator. Parents will call in very frequently when there is an issue with their student's living situation. If they're a butthole, frequent, I quote FERPA to them. Best example, I had to bill a student for around $600 in damage to their room at the end of the year. Mom called really angry about this because they had tried to repair the damages. Poorly, I should add. She ended up yelling about this over the phone, and I reminded her that her son was 22 years old and that I could only talk with him about this. Kid calls me back the next day and apologizes for his mom being such a B-word to me and asks if I could just lie to his mom when she calls back. It's a weird line of work. Not a teacher, but my dad once worked as a groundskeeper at a primary school. Worst thing he ever saw was a guy dropping his daughter off to school, and before she went through the gate, her dad went through her school bag and took out all of her packed food and left eating it, essentially leaving her with nothing to eat that day. Dad was so angry he said he wanted to knock the guy out right there and then for leaving his child with no food for the day, but he ended up going straight to the principal to tell them what he witnessed so it could be investigated properly and get the kid help. My kid went to the preschool run by the public school system. One day, I saw one of his classmates. Every student was either 3 or 4. Moms opened the front passenger door, and they drove off with the radio cranked and the little girl dancing on the seat, leaning against the dashboard. The back seat was totally empty, not even a car seat. The next day, I offered the lady my other kid's seat. I'd buy another one on the way home. She told me to F off and drove away with her daughter again, standing out on the front seat. I let the principal know, and we watched the car drive into the traffic towards the highway. Day 3. I've called the police, but they'll only come if I call during the pickup. Great, that'll only take 30 minutes for them to arrive after mom drives off with the daughter dancing on the seat again. I tell the principal I'm reporting the mom to family services if she won't intervene. On day 4, a guy shows up in her car and comes nose to nose with me. Without even so much as an introduction, he says if I keep harassing his woman, I'll regret it. I tell the principal, nothing she can do. They stop bringing the kid to school after that. Parent witness to an event, not a teacher. My kid's very first day of school. She's 4.5. In the gym hall, all the kids and parents are in line according to class, and one by one the teachers come and take them away. Our group was last to go. As we're waiting, a guy storms in, clearly drunk, starts shouting at a woman in the line, "Why the F didn't you tell me it was now? I've been looking everywhere," etc., etc. He slaps the mom. Another dad in the line pulls drunk dad away and pushes him. He falls down on top of another kid. That kid's mom screams, drunk starts to run out, squished kid's dad chases him. He made it out of the gym, but then got caught and the crap kicked out of him in the school reception. Everyone is freaked out. Kids are crying. Then the very happy teacher who is completely unaware comes in. I start Googling prices for private school. That doesn't sound like a single person involved responded the way that they really should have, although I do think the guy deserved a bit of a smack around the chops. Not a teacher anymore, but a registered nurse. Kid wakes up from dental surgery, a 4-year-old who needed a root canal. Several extractions and fillings, horrible dentition. Mom and dad nowhere to be found post-op. Eventually, they wander into the recovery room from the parking lot. Reeking of cigarettes and the devil's lettuce, proceed to give the 4-year-old a baby bottle of Mountain Dew. The pediatric dentist took the parents aside into a consult room to yell at them and lecture them. They told him to mind his own effing business, scooped up the kid and walked out. Saddest part was, I remember the poor kiddo had filthy feet and hair, also reeked of cigarettes. He looked so defeated already. All I could think was that this kid has an uphill battle for a decent life. Being a registered nurse is heartbreaking, not always for the reasons you'd expect. Not a teacher, but my mom is. She teaches the visually impaired. There are these 2 students of hers whose parents, mainly the mom, tell them that they can't do anything and won't be able to do anything, and all they do while at home is sit around because their mom makes them. However, my mom has been teaching them for about 4 years, trying to get them to believe in themselves. It mostly has worked, but recently a different teacher told them that they can't do anything as well, so that has been a huge setback for them. I just think that it's really trashy for a parent who tells their kid that they can't do anything, even though they can do many things that other people can. Or maybe it's a foreign concept to some people, but overcoming adversity, making the most of the hand you've been dealt, it's important to people people's confidence, and this mother clearly does not do much for her son's confidence. Last year, I taught 5th grade. I had a student for 1 block a day that was a little mentally unstable. She developed a crush on another girl and began writing her a ton of creepy notes. The school was handling it, but apparently the second girl's mother didn't think that was enough, so they drove to the first girl's bus stop in the morning and started yelling and threatening her. They basically had her cornered when the bus driver showed up and had to pry this raging mom away from the student. The mom definitely shouldn't have reacted that way, but I gotta ask, how creepy were these notes? I used to work in a daycare, and on my first day in a new room with 15 to 24-month-olds, I picked up a little boy and noticed he had dropped something through the neck hole in his onesie. I pulled it out, and it was a lighter. When we returned it to the mom and told her where we found it, she laughed and said, "The kid gets his hands on everything." Poor kid also sounded like a smoker every time he laughed or coughed. End of day. Parents were pulling up to the building to pick up their kids. 2 moms got into a physical fight in the parking lot when one of them pulled a baseball bat out of the trunk of her car. The families both jumped in, and it was an all-out brawl. Went on a trip to America for the performing arts. Parent met their kids at the end of the trip for the last 2 days. Parent went out and got hammered both nights and would sneak into her student room, utterly off their face, and wake all the kids up to try and party. Tagged along to our final tour dinner with all the kids and got hammered again. Worst person ever. That sounds like a parent going through a midlife crisis and trying to relive the days of their youth because they're surrounded by younger people, maybe. And it's sad. Was in a parent-teacher conference as a middle school teacher. The kid starts talking about college. The parent looks at this kid and says, "You're not going to college. You're not smart enough." Like, WTF, how could you stifle your children that way? What a piece of crap. Not a teacher, but definitely saw it happen. Dude talks trash about this girl's cousin. Yes, cousin, of all things. There are tight groups of friends, and her friends were not happy and confronted him. Next day, his mom has the audacity to come over and threatens the entire staff and students with some special injection that will make them mentally impaired. As if she showing up to defend her son, who is to blame, was not surprising enough, she goes on to throw an absolute tantrum of accusations and consequences. Our principal, who is a loudmouth retired general, just stood there dumbfounded. Lady coming in like Papsimus Scirocco from Zeta Gundam, being all like, "Yeah, well, you're gonna be pooing in nappies for the rest of your life when I'm done with you." Ah man, if anyone's out here looking for anime recommendations and likes mechas, give Gundam a shot. In fact, start with Gundam Thunderbolt. It is so sick, it will get you into the franchise probably. Not a teacher, but leader of a camp for children. We had a child, let's call him Bob, about 8 years old. After 3 days of camp and 11 more to come, we found out he already run out of clean socks. Well, we called his mother and she told us they are from far away and they can't drive there or send them. After about 10 minutes of talking, we came to the conclusion that we will wash his dirty socks and she will bring new ones on the visiting day. Visiting day is in the middle of the camp, and as it came, his mother showed up. We were kind of surprised, because she sounded like she did not care over the phone. Visiting day ended and all the children were supposed to go to the forest to play games and forget about parents for the next 7 days. That is when Bob told us his mother took all of his socks, even those he had on his feet. We called Bob's mother again, and she just said it is our problem, so take care of it, and hung up. I called my mother and asked if she had any socks left from when I was young. She luckily had, and drove them to us. Bob left with 10 new pairs of socks and never came to our camp again. That essentially sounds like the mother was taking out the inconvenience that basically came of their lack of preparedness on the child by taking away all the socks, which is really screwed up behavior. Some people, again, just don't deserve to be parents. That might sound kind of extreme, but this lady just sounds vindictive and generally spiteful. Why cheat when you can leave the relationship? Because you can't cheat when you're not in a relationship. Duh. Some people get a dopamine hit in their brain from cheating and a sense of comfort and familiarity being in a relationship. They want both. Not proud of it, but I did it once upon a time. Never again. The rush and excitement of a new love is not worth all the guilt you feel, the pain you cause others, and the horrible feeling you get when you realize that you are not a nice person. I recently read a study where they measured the level of regret in women after episodes of high-risk sex. They were looking at hookup culture, but cheating was included. They identified a cycle of hookup, regret, and doing it again. They postulated that the purpose of regret as an emotion was to limit the behavior, and that regret might grow with subsequent episodes. However, what they found was that the level of regret diminished with each subsequent episode, such that after several flings, a woman engaging in high-risk sex has no regret at all all. I recognize that hooking up is not exactly the same as cheating, but the study would suggest that once a cheater, always a cheater, is not necessarily true. A person who arrests cheating behavior early might regain mastery over their behavior, i.e., it suggests a marriage can likely be salvaged after an isolated failure, but an ingrained pattern of behavior might be irredeemable. Therefore, the standard advice of kick her to the curb might not be the best option, and a more nuanced assessment would be more appropriate. However, a serial cheater is likely to have a hard time getting control of their compulsion, as their regret diminishes to zero. I'd love to hear opinions from women on this. I would also love to hear women's opinions on this. I asked myself the question when I had a woman who was trying to cheat on her husband with me. I was like, if she's as miserable as she says, why not leave? Had a friend give me this exact explanation, and it made a lot of sense. So much security and safety, and they are too lazy to make a change for themselves. I came close to cheating once, and it was because I didn't admit to myself just how unhappy I was in the relationship. I kept telling myself I can make it work. Then I was put in an environment that had several ladies that were happy to talk to me and be around me. That dopamine hit was massive, and I can 100% see how it can just happen. Luckily, I allowed myself to be honest about my feelings and broke up with my ex before I did anything. Do everybody a favor. Always be honest with yourself. That last bit, absolutely words to live by. From my understanding, it's better to have the safety net of the familiar and go do whatever than to end things and risk things not working out. Easier to use someone as a safe space and explore rather than taking the risk alone. I had a jerk of a housemate tell me once it's because it made the breakups easier for him. He'd cheat and make sure his partner found out, and that way they could get all mad at him and never want to speak to him again, and he could just go about his life like nothing happened. There's a certain thrill to sneaking around. Some people get off on the gotta hide whatever feeling they get from cheating. Also, if they leave the relationship, then they lose whatever perks of that relationship. It's hard to survive in the world on a single income. When there are kids and a mortgage involved, it's easier said than done. Not condoning it, but conventional and flawed wisdom often values stability and security over honesty. And sometimes people just get stuck in abusive, one-sided relationships, but their upbringing has taught them to stick through it, no matter how bad it gets. The short answer is that the person cheating is usually and often accurately perceives that they, and often their children and perhaps even their spouse, believe it or not, few cheaters simply don't care about their partner's well-being, would be financially devastated and emotionally traumatized by blowing up their shared household, and since no one cheats with an intent to get caught, this is the way to remedy the missing spark without sacrificing the household stability of everyone else. This is the kind of answer that comes from someone that purely values objects and money and doesn't actually care about anyone else's feelings, while simultaneously trying to gaslight someone into believing that they are the least selfish person in the room. Like, personally, I abhor betrayal and treachery of any kind. I'm not religious, and I only know this because I watched the frickin' Dante's Inferno video game movie with all the different styles and everything, but there is a reason why treachery is the ninth circle of hell. My marriage ended with infidelity. In my experience, it didn't happen all at once. It was a gradual thing. One year we were a little distant, then the distance grew cold, and then we were like two cubicle workers making our life run. But along the way, there were exciting milestones that made me think that we were succeeding, that we were happy. A graduate degree, the purchase of a little home together, the decision to try for a baby, the joy a year later when we finally succeeded, new jobs, the birth of our kid, moving to a new city. And there was heartbreak, the death of his father, my battle with postpartum depression, a job loss, illness in the family, my parents divorcing after 40 years of marriage. It was easy to point to those things as the reason we felt so apart. We weren't ready to admit that there was something broken between us too. So I assume when his co-worker was a sparkly new friend and they found themselves working late at the office more and more frequently over time, I'm sure their pull toward one another just grew. But here's the thing. My first marriage was over before he cheated. The question was, as Esther Perel puts it, was whether I would spend my second marriage with the same person. His new partner made it an easy answer for both of us. I don't blame the cheating for my divorce though. It was just a symptom of something already wrong. For me, his affair gave me clarity about the fact that we hadn't been happy for a long time. It's been 7 years since we split, and our daughter is incredible. We co-parent beautifully together. He married his co-worker, they have a 2-year-old together, and she's a great stepmother to my kid. My career has taken off and I'm remarrying later this year. I am so grateful grateful he asked for the separation and for the person I became after my divorce. Cheating isn't always this black and white thing people make it out to be. Time heals all wounds. I know this person clearly had a lot of time to reflect and contextualize how things ended the way they did, and I'm glad that everyone seems to have walked away from the situation to better lives. Still don't condone cheating of any kind, though. Cheating is a suck-butt thing to do, and I'm not defending it, but many married people are financially bound together but unhappy. It's the wrong thing to do, but it may go some way toward explaining it in many circumstances. Because people don't cheat because they want a new relationship, they cheat because they want the excitement of a casual relationship and the comfort of a long-term relationship at the same time. If I'm trying to put myself in a cheater's shoes, then the 3 reasons I would assume are 1. Lust. This form of cheating is physical and not much thought put into it. 2. Happiness. This is when someone feels trapped, marriage, kids, history, and just wants a moment to escape and relies on the affair partner to make them happy. 3. Safety net. Cheaters think about it this way. Why would you leave a job without having another job lined up already? It ensures that they won't go through a period of feeling undesired. From my understanding, the reason for cheating and staying in a relationship can be a myriad of reasons. Some people have such low self-esteem that the minute they get any attention from someone else they consider attractive, they have a hard time shutting them down. Others have a very separate idea of a stable love from a committed relationship and attraction from a fling. In these scenarios, the perpetrator still loves their partner, but they fall victim to their personal issues and betray their partner's trust. Others, however, are more narcissistic and view their staying in a relationship despite cheating as a favor to their partner. Others still may come from very traditional backgrounds and feel they can't leave their relationships despite no longer loving them. All of this doesn't even account if there are children in the picture too. Do people really not get this? People don't want to be single or in a new relationship. They want all the perks of their existing relationship plus the thrill of something new. They aren't trying to be fair or considerate or reasonable. They want everything they already have plus more, and they think they'll get away with it so no one will get hurt. Yeah, I pretty much completely agree with everything this person says, but this is already a downer topic, so I'm not going to get too deep into some of this stuff. Emotional immaturity and codependency. It's easier to let go of someone when someone else desires you. Basically, they want out and they've made up their mind about it. You may have no clue yet. They're not interested in working through issues. They're done. So to make things easier for themselves, they cheat. This way, they're getting the attention their low self-esteem needs from outside the relationship and no longer have to regard your feelings. They expect you to be upset when you find out. In fact, that feeds their low self-esteem even more. Your anger, confusion, and disappointment makes it more likely you'll say or do something in retaliation. Any such action on your part makes it easier for them to justify in their own mind that they were right in choosing to leave you. To them, things ended a long time ago, so they don't really see it as cheating. They use cognitive dissonance to cope with how they feel about themselves. Pointing this out to them doesn't help them, and especially doesn't help you. In fact, the bigger of a deal you make it, the more you'll be gaslit. Don't expect fairness or accountability from this person. If it goes public, you're likely screwed, as people who are capable of convincing themselves they're in the right in this kind of situation have no problem making things up in order to preserve their public image. The best thing to do once you become aware of it is nothing. Anything you do in terms of confrontation will only make things worse. Instead, quietly get your affairs in order until you're in the financial position to cut and run. The person you thought you knew is gone. Think of them like an alien who took over your former partner's body. Lament in private. Cover your butt while you're exposed. Leave on your timeline, never look back or engage. They are now dead to you. Ultimately, people will respect you more for your maturity and you'll give the ex no grounds to come after you. In fact, they may even implode, but that doesn't matter. How they feel doesn't matter anymore. Winning is getting away cleanly. Because one, divorce is expensive, like really expensive, and most people can't afford rent and mortgage on one salary these days, plus long-term financial plans will be seriously derailed. 2, change is scary for everyone. Clearly the marriage that now sucks was once a great idea, now it's not, but it was a big deal not to be taken lightly. New relationships are extra exciting, and someone who is married has seen the extra exciting relationship turn into something not great. The new thing has no guarantee and cheating gives the best of both worlds. 3, maybe there are kids involved, staying together for the kids is an awful idea, but 7 seconds of getting your noodle wet trumps disappointing your kids for life, unless you get caught. 4. People suck. Everyone has done something they shouldn't have and there is a rush to it. Maybe it was a little white lie. Maybe it was something criminal. Either way, it was the easy way out and you were delighted you didn't get caught. The first time it was difficult but rewarding. The next time was less difficult but still rewarding. Eventually, it's just rewarding. Monkey branching, too afraid to jump without having something to hold on to. People stuck in emotionally abusive relationships often cheat as an escape. Simply breaking up is much easier said than done due to the amount of psychological control that's usually involved. Because you have to keep the main person around in case the side piece doesn't work out. You have attachment issues. You're financially tied to a person. There are many reasons. None of them are good reasons, but people who cheat don't care. Don't mind me, I'm just thinking about King of the Hill and Nancy Hicks Gribble cheating on Dale Gribble with John Redcorn. There's the bit where they're doing the duck boats and Nancy's all like, no wonder I need 2 men in my life. One of them keeps letting me down. Because you don't want to leave the relationship, you just want to have sex with other people. As a retired serial cheater in my teens and early 20s, this is an honest answer. Some people are legit skeezy. Others are genuinely in love with their partner but also have other asexual needs and don't know how to square that circle. I'm definitely against cheating, but I think it's important to challenge the idea that cheaters are all evil, weak, foolish, etc. Cheating is quite common, even among people who maintain otherwise healthy relationships. I think the cultural fantasy we have that two people can always fully provide for each other's needs and that true love conquers all is really quite childish, a fairy tale. Certainly it is not 100% impossible for two people to be able to meet most of each other's needs. It can happen, but it's incredibly far from universal. I don't think that everyone should be polyamorous, but I do think that many people really need to be and should, and that some people need to be but don't have any of the skills necessary to manage polyamorous relationships. I've never cheated, by the way. Psychotherapist Esther Perel has a lot of really intelligent and useful stuff to say about this topic. She's helped a lot of relationships come back from that place of broken trust. And she is much better than me at explaining why cheating doesn't necessarily mean that the cheater is a bad person or doesn't love their partner, and at explaining why our current cultural views of romance and relationships really set a lot of us up for failure. Which is not to say that all cheaters are loving, good people. They are certainly much more likely to not be than the average. My point is more that it's not a universal thing, and we should be looking more deeply into this. So I briefly looked into who this Esther Perel person was because I was interested. And in the brief time I've been looking this person up, I probably can't exactly make that many assumptions about who they are or anything or what their theory is exactly, but I don't particularly like what I'm hearing from them in their talks and whatnot. Maybe it's just my principles getting in the way of me being enlightened by these groundbreaking ideas, and I say that with quotation marks. It all sounds very intelligent in that they've mastered the oratory arts, they're just a very good speaker, they have chosen the perfect words to get their argument across and everything, but at the same time there is just a lack of morality, it seems, and even awareness that cheating, infidelity in itself is just inherently cruel to do to an individual who isn't aware or casually and callously abusing the relationship and whatnot. God damn, just open up a frickin' dialogue. Also, if you're interested in this author's ideas, go check them out yourself because I'm not slandering them. I'm more just wondering how this person became, and I quote, a national authority on modern relationships? I love my partner and would die for her, but I haven't been asexually attracted for a very long time. I get through sex with her because of the love, but I don't look at her and see someone that I find attractive. I wish I did, and I'm mad at myself for not, but I can't help it. Breaking up has a lot of consequences that people don't want to deal with. If they live with their partner, they'll probably have to move out, which is a headache and expensive. They might depend on their partner financially and can't afford to break up, or they aren't willing to give up their current lifestyle/income. It will be really hard on the kids if they have any, and so they don't want to break up the family. They might lose joint friends and other relationships that they have together, because they will usually side with one or the other. Most divorces are incredibly expensive and taxing for both parties. You could be going in and out of court for months or even years. If you're worried about that last thing, then that's why you should get a prenup. A prenup is a prenuptial agreement that basically says your finances and properties and whatever will be divvied up in this way, and you can both agree that in case of a divorce, no one gets anything. And it's a very good way of sussing out what the person you are marrying's real intentions are and what they value before you get married.
What if there is a woman in an abusive relationship with someone she is afraid to leave? If she tells him it's over, he will blow up. If she just sneaks out and leaves and lives on her own, he might find her and still get to her. She has been with this abusive guy so long, she doesn't think she can leave. He tells her how terrible she is, how worthless she is, and that she should be happy that he puts up with her. She might not have an income or money of her own. Some people take care of all the money and only give a bit to their partner when they ask. Let's say this woman meets another man. She meets him at work, she meets him through mutual friends, maybe an old flame looks her up. He is kind to her, and she starts to feel like she might matter a bit. Like maybe she isn't so awful, but she can't just move in with this other guy. So they start a relationship. She is finding a way to escape and a way to rebuild herself. When she has the self-esteem to leave, she also has a way to maybe get some financial and emotional support and protection. Believe it or not, I would honestly say that if you're with an abusive person, then yeah, feel free to cheat on them. If they hit you, if they smack you around, make you feel like crap every day, legitimately abuse you, then yeah, you can do whatever the hell you want. If it means you can somehow get out of that relationship, except kill them, because where does that leave you? My mom tried to leave my dad for years. He was an extremely angry person who was physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially abusive. It was bad. Cops were involved a lot during my childhood from domestic disputes. They never did anything. He wouldn't let her leave. She tried. It always ended up with her and my siblings and I being hurt by him. He's got 2 kids me or my siblings have never met from affairs. He told my mom it was her fault. One day, she met someone and they fell in love, and she eventually told him about it. It was a really scary time, but he kicked her out for it. I know that was the happiest day of her life because she finally got away. It's been about 10 years. She's still with that person she met, and I've never thought for 1 second my mom was wrong for cheating. There are a few things more hurtful than cheating. Just be honest and say you want out. That's better for everyone. Also, preserves the would-be cheater's honor. Money. The old saying, it's cheaper to keep him/her. No-fault divorce is being outlawed in a few states. It's hard to believe, but it's turning into a thing. Well, it's better to be a poor man's joy than a rich man's toy. Oh, take it from me. You ought to see. Upon that love, there's only misery. And it's better to be a man's whole world than a sometimes girl. Ruby Winter's better for those of you wondering, and I know most of y'all are just here for the Reddit stories and all that, but come on, I'm trying to give you dinner and a show here most of the time. I think people who cheat have tunnel vision and lack of foresight and insight. A friend of mine is a serial cheater. He's always in some sort of relationship that he completely dive bombs into without any thought, and it ends in chaos every time. I think he does it because he enjoys the thrill of it, and also he's terrified to be single. Possibly mental illness plays a part in this. He is financially ruined from his last divorce because of his cheating, but moved in with his new girl within a month. It's so exhausting to watch from the outside. Cheating can be a misguided attempt to address unhappiness within a relationship. Some individuals may struggle with the emotional difficulty of ending a partnership, fearing confrontation, loneliness, or the upheaval of their lives. Instead, they may seek temporary solace or validation through infidelity. However, cheating undermines trust, hurts both parties involved, and can cause long-term damage. While leaving a relationship requires courage and honesty, it provides an opportunity for personal growth, finding a more compatible partner, and fostering healthier connections in the future. I think most of the time cheating is an emotional thing, not a logical thing. I once knew someone who was in a dying relationship. The relationship was going nowhere and she was losing interest in her boyfriend. The right thing to do would be break up with her boyfriend. Instead, she cheated on him and then she almost immediately confessed to him and begged for forgiveness. At a glance, this would look like a passionate mistake and then instant remorse. But in my time knowing her, she always hated taking responsibility or being blamed for things. I have seen her seriously hurt people, including me, to avoid taking blame or responsibility. I think she subconsciously thought that if she broke up with her boyfriend, he'd be angry and he'd blame her. So she couldn't break up with him. She doesn't want that kind of responsibility. But if instead of breaking up with him, she cheated on him, then he would break up with her. Her cheating makes the breakup A, his responsibility, and B, inevitable. So she can't chicken out of it anymore. Note that this plan does not make 100% sense. It's worse to be blamed for cheating than for breaking up. But when she doesn't want to be blamed for something, she really will hurt people, so they will do things that she doesn't want to take responsibility for. Anyways, her plan backfired. Her boyfriend decided to forgive her and give her another chance. A few days later, she broke up with him. It just sounds really vindictive to me at a certain point. Like, God
Damn, you're toying with people's emotions here. And by the way, I'm not down for cheating in either way. If anyone's got the impression that I'm like, yeah, boys or anything like that, no, I just think cheating of any kind with anyone just hurts people and it sucks so goddamn badly. This one just made me sad to read through. Then again, quite a few of these had made me sad lately. I need a happier topic.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.